Warning! The Stone Age Gamer podcast includes a lot of bad language. Cover your motherfucking ears.
Good evening and welcome to the Stone Age Gamer podcast. I'm Kris Randazzo and joining me tonight is 8-bits on a 16-bit machine, Dan Ryan.
So many more pixels, so much hotter.
It's interview time. This evening we'll be joined by Rumbleminze, a programmer who has been doing some very interesting things, porting NES games to the Super NES. Why would anyone do that? Get rid of all that pesky sprite flick... Wow, I fucked that up. Get rid of all that pesky sprite flickering. That's actually a bit of a tongue twister. Why did I write that? Anyway, do that because the Stone Age Gamer podcast flickering? Starts now.
You said
yes.
Pexy.
Pexy.
I'm feeling a little pexy. Maybe that's how I'm feeling. I might use that to describe myself from now. How you doing? I'm a little pexy. A little pexy.
Sexy with all these big pectoral muscles. Hi, everyone. Yeah, this is episode 527. It's the week of August 16th, 2024, and welcome. For anyone new here, this is the official podcast of StoneAgeGamer.com. Dan and I talk every week about what's happening in the world of video games from a retro gamer's perspective, as well as whatever the heck else is going on in our lives. Speaking of which, what's new and exciting, Dr. Dan?
Oh, man. Nothing. I mean, we just talked like 3 days ago. So right, not a ton has happened.
We're recording early this week because my wife bought me tickets to see Bit Brigade perform Castlevania and The Legend of Zelda on Friday. So this was the only other night that I was available because I'm recording podcasts every other night this week. So here we are on Wednesday. So yeah, not a whole lot of new has happened in the last couple of days.
Yeah, no, I've had a bunch of more tests done. I had to go get an echocardiogram again. Because I had to take one like in January. I think I went and got an echo done because they claim that I have high blood pressure. What do doctors know? So I had to go get one done in January, but because I'm about to be annihilating my system with all of these drugs and treatments and whatnot, they were like, "You got to go do this." And then I had to have a follow-up appointment for my surgery. So, like, I go into the follow-up appointment for the surgery, and my surgeon comes in, and he's good, man. Like, he's, like, tippy-top. You know what I mean? And I was even, like, I was like, Doc, I'm a little bummed that you did such a good job on the surgery here, because, like, I'm not even going to have, like, a cool scar to say anything about. Like, it's going to heal totally fine, and... like, that's kind of fucked up. And he was like, most people don't share that opinion. And I was like, no, I get that. Like, most people want to hide it. Sure. But he had a student doctor with him, right? Like, or not a student doctor, just a student trying to become a doctor. My doctor comes over and he's examining my neck, and he's like, yep, it all, it feels good. And, everything like it's healing the way that it should. You have the numbness here. That's fine. It'll go away eventually, blah, blah, blah. So we get done and I look over at the student guy. I'm like, you want to come cop a feel? And he's like, I mean, no, I do want to come examine your neck though, if that's okay. And I was like, yeah, man, get on over here. You got to learn somehow. My neck is right here. There was just a surgery. Why don't you come on and feel it? And he was so rough, Kris. He was like aggressively massaging my neck. I was like, stop it. This is weird. Get off me. I've never had anybody be so handsy. And I was like, I certainly don't want to say anything in the moment of like, all right, so that was good, but maybe pull back the energy a little bit, because that's not my place. But it was super weird. So like I went and did those two on Monday, and then we're recording this Wednesday. Yesterday, I had to go do a pulmonary test. So the way I had to do this test, right? Because the other ones I just had to sit there. This pulmonary test was fucking crazy. So I had to, like, I sat. You ever see those things like at science centers or boardwalks or whatever? The hurricane simulator machine. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right. So I basically went and sat in one of those. and they put like this big plastic tube that you have to put in your mouth, and the guy's like, all right, you got to breathe normally, and when I tell you to, you have to take in the biggest breath of air that you can. And as soon as you take in that as big a breath of air as you can, you have to then blow all of the air out of your lungs. And I don't know about you, Kris, but I breathe through my nose, mostly. I am not a mouth breather. Right?
I am.
Are you? Okay.
I'm breathing through my mouth right now. No, it's not true.
This was very, very difficult for me because they pinch your nose shut and then you have to, like as big a breath as you could, and then you. But when they say blow all the air out of your lungs, I want you to practice this when you're not on the podcast. I want you to blow all of the air out of your lungs until it hurts. Right? Because usually you're like, blow all the air out. You're like, okay, I got all the air out. Like, he was like, keep going. And I was like, motherfucker, there's no more air. But, obviously it was the weirdest test I've ever fucking done. It was so difficult because it's so counterintuitive to how I breathe. Right? It was just very, very odd. I had to do it like three times. And then there was another one where you had to like take in a giant breath of air and then hold it for 10 seconds. And then blow it out because they're testing to see like how much your lungs absorb, kind of thing. I was like, oh, fuck, man. It was a lot. It was a weird test. But I don't have any more for the rest of this week. Monday, however, oh boy. I have to go. 11 o'clock.
It's going on Monday.
I have to go at 11 o'clock in the morning to get a PET scan done. Okay, so PET scan, basically what's going to happen is I'm going to go in, I'm going to lay down on a table, and I can't move while they stick me in a tube and take pictures, basically, of my insides. And that is not, like, have you ever had an MRI done?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Took me a minute.
So, like that little tube that you got to lay in with your claustrophobia self?
Yeah. It was.
I'm going to be in one of those. I'm going to be in one of those for like an hour.
That sounds horrible.
Yeah, so I got to go do that. That's at 11 o'clock in the morning. Then at 1:30, I have to go get a bone marrow biopsy. So what they're going to do, that's exactly what you think it is. It's a big, they get like a drill.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a drill. It's not even a needle. They get like, it's one of those old hand drills. It's rusty. It's like it's done like Steve Martin's character in Little Shop of Horrors. That's the kind of drill that I think they're going to use to get down into the bone marrow, to do the bone marrow biopsy. And then at 2:30, I have to go get my port put into my chest. So that is a general anesthesia, so they have to knock me out for that. So that's like a surgical procedure. So that's my Monday. And then theoretically, if all of that, right?
You should come. You should show up at the doctor's office with like a lasagna and a shirt that says "I hate Mondays." Like,
right? Fuck, dude. Theoretically, if all of that goes the way it's supposed to, and I don't anticipate it not, because like the PET scan is the PET scan. They're gonna get the bone marrow biopsy. I'm just not like they're just gonna jab me, and then for the port placement, I'll be asleep. So if all of that goes the way it's supposed to go, theoretically on Wednesday the 14th, I will have my first chemotherapy session. I will have my first infusion. That's why the port is being put in, so that they can just hook it up. It's just basically like an IV that they leave permanently in your body. For 2 years, like we talked about last week. So right. Theoretically, by the time we record next week, I will be 2 days post my first infusion. So things are happening. Like it's real, And I'm having such a hard time really focusing on anything else of like, all right, I have 1 million doctor's appointments. I got stuff I got to do for work. I got, like this, that, and the other thing. But like also at the same time, like I'm about like, this is really starting, I'm about to know what the fuck this feels like.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the thing that you should be focusing the most of your attention on right now.
That's what I thought I should be focusing on, like not all this other stuff. And I don't know, man. It's wild. It's really even it's such a weird like out of body experience almost. Because like I know that this is all happening to me. But it still feels, I don't know. I'm trying to be like very clinical about it, and not like super emotional and whatever, like, oh, this is happening to me and my life. And like, I'm trying to, like, this just is what it is. It's the things that I have to now go through in order to, if we start the treatment next Wednesday, then, all things being equal, I will be done with treatment in February. So that seems like it's a long time away, but it's really not,
Yeah, it's right around the corner.
It really is. And
you could be done with treatment before the Switch 2 comes out.
I could be. That'll be a present to myself for beating cancers. I'll get a Switch 2. No, that's silly. Doesn't like do you get presents for that? I don't know. Do we have a party when I'm done?
I say you do whatever the fuck you want. You beat cancer.
It's a weird thing because like that's also part of it. Like once I get through this, I don't want to sit around like I'm not going to join like a 5K. Like the walk to end. Like I'm not interested in that survivor thing. Which is going to be difficult with certain members of my family are going to just kind of encourage that sort of thing and coming from a good place, obviously, and all of that. But like that's certainly not the avenue that I'm looking to pursue. I mean, certainly over these next 6 months, I'm going to milk it for all it's worth. But then once that's over, it's a weird thing to think about of like, going through the holidays and like all that's going to be very weird. And it's just the thing we're doing, Kris. It's going to be a hell of a Monday though. I got to tell you what, that is a hell of a Monday I got coming up.
Yeah. Doesn't sound like a fun day.
No, certainly not. It's just another manic Monday.
Just another.
Wish it was a fun day. And the fan that I have down here in my office. So I thought there was a frog in my office. Doesn't make any sense that there would be a frog in the office, but like I got really excited that I was going to go like on a Blaster Master adventure before I had to start chemo. I was like, fuck, there's a frog in here. That's awesome. I'm going to follow him out and get into a tank. It's going to be fucking dope. I'm so excited. And it turns out that it was not a frog that was making very distinctively frog-like sounds. It was the fan that I have had in my office that has been on every summer-ish season for the last couple of years, and it just kind of stays on. And it just decided to stop working. And I was like, well, I have to go buy another fucking fan because it's hot. Even though it's like only, 75 today?
Yeah,
with our
not so bad.
Crazy-ass weather. It's not so bad, but it's still, I'm out in the garage. Like, it's still hot. So I did not get to go on a super fun adventure. I just have a broken fan that I have to replace. It's like, well, that's not the same.
That is very different from Blaster Master, yeah.
That's what's going on with me, Kris.
Speaking of shit not working that's supposed to, I'm down another toaster.
Just
it was
hanging.
funny in the Discord. Who sent that message? Somebody in the Discord was talking about toasters, and
wanted to know about your programmable fucking super toaster that you played Doom on.
Yeah, and I said, don't get it because that toaster's a piece of shit. We already replaced it. And I replaced it with just like a nice looking Hamilton Beach one from Target, and this was just a few months ago. It's already dead. It won't the whatever
really
mechanism that locks the handle down just doesn't. It's not doing it anymore.
Yeah, just put a heavy book on it.
Mario's a fucking liar. All toasters don't toast. Not my toasters. So we bought another one today. We just decided that since we're just going to keep going through toasters, let's just buy the cheapest ones imaginable. So Karen got one at Target for like $12 or something.
Yeah, and that one's going to last you forever.
Yeah, that's going to outlast everything else, no question.
It's the best toaster you're ever going to have.
What did I talk about? I talked about the TV situation last week, right?
Yeah.
So, to replace the TV that I use for work in the basement, work bought me a new TV. So I went and I got this Samsung TV, and I absolutely hated the picture. It was just a huge problem was the picture. And I thought it was some sort of setting issue. So I went through all this customer service stuff.
Dean was unhelpful. I mean, I was unhelpful too. But
true, but you weren't trying to be helpful. That was the goal for you.
That's right.
I went through all this customer service stuff with Best Buy, and they basically were like, "It sounds like this isn't going. This TV's just not going to do what you want it to do. So it's weird that it's not going to do what you want it to do because this is a 2024 TV. It shouldn't look like that, but here we are.
Right.
So it's within a couple of days. So just go back to the store and exchange it for either get another one of the same TV, or you can pick out a different one." And so they picked out this TCL TV for me. But the guy on the phone, he recommended that I try to get, just replace the Samsung one and see if it's a problem with the TV itself. So I went out there and I looked at the Samsung one on the show floor, and it had the exact same problem. I was like, I'm not crazy. So I'm talking to the guy at Best Buy, and I'm like, look, this is the problem that I'm having. And on the little, like, all the nature scenes and stuff that they have looping at the store, one of those nature scenes was a snowscape. And the entire snowscape was just solid white. There's absolutely no detail on the snow at all whatsoever, right? Because when you look at snow, it's not just like a piece of paper that's just completely flat, glowing white. There's detail. There's, like, hills and valleys and things that you should be able to see in snow, but it's just
theoretically
solid white, absolutely nothing but glowing solid white everywhere where there was snow. I was like, that's the problem that I'm having. I need a TV that doesn't do that, because my $300 piece of shit RCA I bought from ShopRite doesn't do that.
Doesn't fucking do that.
Yeah, my old plasma that I'm getting rid of because the HDMI ports don't work anymore and it's having a hard time even staying on. That thing doesn't do that. Whites don't look like complete utter garbage, right? I'm watching the Phillies game right now, and if I was watching this on that Samsung TV, the Dodgers uniforms, every person on the Dodgers would just be solid white. You wouldn't be able to see the folds in the shirts. That's a problem, right? TVs shouldn't look like that,
for sure.
But apparently, some modern TVs do. So they suggested that I go with this. What I say, TCR? Is that
TCL?
TCL. I cannot remember this acronym for the life of me.
I think that is Best Buy's store brand. I think
could be. I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure it is,
because it's got. I always thought Vizio was their brand, but maybe I'm mistaking that.
No.
Either way,
definitely not.
So the one that they recommended was the TCL because it was on sale. And when I talked to the guy at Best Buy, he was like, there was either that or there was like a Samsung that was more expensive. And I was like, well, my budget is what it is, because this isn't my money. It's my job's money, and this is how much I have to spend. And so he said, normally I'd say get the Samsung because like that's just a better brand, but this is a QLED TV, which is way better than the LED TV, right? Is it an LED? Right. I think is what the Samsung was. Because that TV just has one big light in the middle that lights everything around it, whereas the QLED is like millions of tiny lights for every single pixel that lights up everything evenly. So I wound up going with that one. It was actually a little bit less expensive because it was on sale. And I get it home, and the picture quality is great. It's not doing that shitty whiteout thing. The TV looks the way it's supposed to look. But then I get to the Switch, and it automatically switches over to game mode or whatever. And
the smoothing and all that shit.
I turn off the stupid smoothing, and I just do the game mode for the input lag. And the input lag is fucking embarrassing. When I say it's like down, even with the, like when I turned it off, it was hilarious because it was just like a solid second between pressing a button and an action happening on the screen. It's like, oh, this is just absurd.
This is just unacceptable.
Yeah, this shouldn't even be allowed. But then turning on game mode, it's still ridiculous. Like it's still just absolutely not okay. So I do some research online. I'm like, this can't be right. There's no way that a consumer electronics made within the last year should act like this. There's just no fucking way. Turns out that I was mostly right. The game mode isn't programmed right for the Switch. Like the way the Switch works, it doesn't work right. You have to go into a different menu to turn on the game mode to make it work the way it's supposed to work. And just like that, it fixed the input lag perfectly. Except it didn't fix the audio.
Huh.
So, as in like now the button presses are perfect, but the audio is lagging behind.
I think you should just sing the songs yourself.
I certainly could.
I know you could.
I'm utterly dumbfounded, and I'm trying to find some sort of information on how to fix this online, and really the only answers people are coming up with, because this is a known issue with TCLs apparently for Switch is or video games in general, is this like this audio lag where they're just get the audio, get a splitter and put your audio out of the HDMI port into the into your own sound system. Like, fuck you. No, why won't the TV just work? Why won't my TV work? Like, this doesn't seem like the kind of thing that I shouldn't just be able to plug the most popular game system on the fucking planet into, current generation into it, and it should just not work. Because when I tell you that the lag without going through the separate menu to manually turn on the game mode that is different from the thing saying it's in game mode, like, it was unplayable. And I'm not using that like hyperbolic. It was actually unplayable. Like, I couldn't play Super Mario Brothers 1. I couldn't make it over pipes. That's how bad the input lag was. It was just unreasonable. So the picture quality is great, and now the game mode makes everything just wonderfully playable, except now the sound is wrong. And I really don't want to go back to Best Buy and pick out a different TV. I'm tired of shopping for televisions. I would just like something that works. And
sure,
I'm just remarkably frustrated. I don't know what to do. I feel like there's got to be a fix for this audio thing, but there doesn't seem to be, at least not that I can tell, which means I'm going to have to call support again and have them talk me through whatever nonsense it is. And be like, tell me how to fix this. And then that's like an hour out of my day just trying to fix this damn television that should work out of the fucking box.
It should. I was incorrect. It is not. TCL is not a Best Buy brand. Insignia is their TV brand.
Insignia, that's the one. I knew it was one of those things. But like, I'm almost thinking that some shitty, cheaper TV might work better. I was really kind of upset about the Samsung not doing the job, because like, I really liked the way the Samsung turned on and off, and I kind of liked its menu system. And I guess I wasn't over the moon about it, but I certainly didn't dislike it. I think one of the things that I really don't like is how smart TVs are. Right? There's so much going on with smart TVs, and I really just
want a panel display.
Yeah, I just wanted to turn on and use my Apple TV, and this one seems to be a bit closer to that, which is nice. But
would it make any kind of sense? I'm just asking. I doubt it. Would it make any kind of sense to just get a projector?
No, I don't think so.
No, not for the space you have.
Not for the space that I have, no. And I mean, even a projector, like a decent one, a decent projector that's going to match even like the displays that I have now is going to be more expensive than the televisions.
Oh, I don't know. I was just asking questions.
Yeah, no, I'm set up for a projector here in the basement. Like, I have all the hookups, but getting one that's going to give me a better picture than my TV is now we're talking into like closer to the thousands of dollars, and that's annoys the shit out of me. But that's where we are technology wise. So I don't know. Sure. I don't know what I'm doing. Sure. I got to figure out something else for some other TV that fits into this budget from Best Buy. And
does it has to be from Best Buy?
I guess it doesn't. I mean, I think I'm within the return policy now where I can get just the money. I haven't had it long enough. I assume they could just give the money back, and then I will just go somewhere else. But I don't know where else to shop where I would find better
Target.
TVs, right? Does Target have different TVs? I thought
I've never had any problem with the TVs that I've gotten from Target. Well, that's not true. One panel did burn out. But I mean, I don't know. Target TVs are fine. I know you don't want to go to Walmart, but
they don't. I don't think they have different brands there. Like, they have the same Samsungs. They have Hisense. They have something called Silvox. I've never heard of that brand before. The hell's a Silvox?
I don't know.
There's Vizio, LED HDR smart TV. Like, I don't know. Do I go with a Vizio? It's about the same price.
I mean, Vizio's fine. I never had any problems. Yes, I have a big TV. I don't even know. Honestly.
It's a fucking rectangle, and it's on my wall.
Yeah, it's a big fucking rectangle. It's a 75-inch something or other. I honestly couldn't tell you. It's from Target. I know that much. It's not a Vizio. Really, like, it's not a name brand. No, like it's a name brand, but it's not like a Sony or a Vizio or a whatever. I mean,
but yeah, that's what they have. That's what they have at Target. They have LG, Samsung. I don't see any no-name brands.
Let me see. It's not a TCL. It's not a Westinghouse. Fuck, do they? It's got Roku on it. It's not a Hisense. I have a Hisense downstairs. That one doesn't work because one of the fucking dogs that we had chewed through the power cord. So that's not the TV's fault. Yeah, I have to open it up and resolder a thingamadoo. Oh, I don't even see the thing I have on here. Whatever.
Well,
it's the Impeca Supersonic. No, it's none of those. Oh, now I'm just in monitors. Yeah, I don't even see it on here. Because the most part, like, most of this, I don't. Okay. So I may be talking out of school, and somebody please feel free to correct me on this. But like, for a lot of this shit, it's all the fucking same. Like Sony, Samsung, Vizio, fucking LG, all of these companies, they don't make their own panels. So, like, the TV that you buy, you're buying all the extra stuff around it, and that certainly makes a difference. But the panels themselves all come from the same place. Yeah, like there's companies that manufacture panels, sell their panels to Sony, to whoever, and they probably sell, I mean, I would imagine that there is some amount of difference in the manufacturing process where some of the panels come out nicer than other panels. That seems to make sense to me. So, like, maybe the better donuts get sent to, you know, right out to the Krispy Kreme, and the shitty donuts we box up and send to the grocery store so that they can sell Krispy Kremes. You know, like, maybe it's that kind of thing. But for the most part, you're just buying the bullshit around the TV. Element? Is that what I have? I might have the Element TV. I think that's what it is. It's been fucking great. It's 4K. It's HDR. Like, looks fucking great.
Well, those things all apply to both the TVs I've had so far, and they aren't fucking great. But I'm gonna keep trying. I'll find something.
Yeah.
There's got to be something, right? One of these days, I'm gonna come across a TV that fucking works.
It's weird that it happened twice.
Like, it is. I mean, two completely different things, obviously, but
if I had a nickel for every time something like this happened, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it is weird that it happened twice.
I am
Dr. Doofenshmirtz.
I do think it's pretty cool that the TVs start up fast now, because I was afraid that this TCL was going to go through a whole rigmarole, but no, it just turns off and on. So at least TV companies have gotten that out of their fucking heads, where no, we need to have a startup sequence. We'll need to flash our logo while everything loads up. Like,
because everybody cares.
I really want to look at a splash screen with the fucking RCA dogs.
Do you fucking love those dogs? Do you have the switch going into a switcher, or do you have the switch going right into the TV?
Straight into the TV.
Okay. Because I thought maybe that might be one of the issues of, like, you have it going through. Are your HDMI cables shitty?
No,
like, not in a dickhead way. Like, are
no,
they?
It's a.
I buy cheap, shitty HDMI cables. So.
They're not $150, crazy cables, but they're decent HDMI cables. One of them I had to get rid of because it was a little too old. It wasn't even my Apple TV thing wasn't even showing up on the new TV because of the cable I was hooking it up to, and it worked just fine on the Samsung, but it wouldn't work on this TCL one. But Nintendo, I'm using the Nintendo HDMI cable that came with the Switch.
Yeah, I buy like Amazon Basics ones. Like, I don't pay
Switch
any fucking attention to that shit.
Works and sounds fine on the RCA. It worked and sound. I mean, it didn't it didn't look fine on the Samsung. That's because nothing looked good on the Samsung.
But it sounded fine.
The sound, the delay is not from the Switch. It's not the Switch's problem. It's the TV. Because it's when I don't have that mode turned on, the sound is synced up. But when I turn the game mode on, it fixes the input lag, but the sound is still playing as if the input lag was there. Right? It's matching up with whatever the input lag was.
Huh.
Which is obnoxious.
And there's no setting for sound.
There's a bunch of sound settings.
The milliseconds or whatever.
You can, and it didn't do shit.
Okay.
There's a whole slider for it where I changed it. Like, you can only go back so far, but you can actually change it to go all the way up like a second delay, and it didn't sound any different. Like, the slider did jack shit.
Huh.
I'm very annoyed.
That's very annoying.
It is indeed. Like, I'm not made of time.
Is it, and it's just on the Switch?
Well, I haven't tried any other game systems
with other systems.
I haven't tried it with other systems yet. I mean, the only other system I have upstairs is the Wii U, and, okay. But that one had the same input lag problem. I didn't fix the input lag on the Wii U yet. I haven't given that a shot. But it does seem to be a general thing with it. Because like the regular TV mode has crazy input lag too, which is odd. Navigating my Apple TV menus is like, well, this is a little annoying. It's fine because it's just navigating a menu, but this is a little odd that this has this much of a refresh rate issue. Modern TVs,
pity.
They just don't make them like they used to.
They certainly don't. And thank God, really. Fucking gigantic pieces of shit.
So heavy.
Oh my God.
I needed help getting plasma out of my basement.
Somebody was talking, I think maybe in our Discord or somewhere, maybe on Reddit, somebody was talking about like picking up a CRT to play their games on. And like, I think back to the last CRT I had, which was a JVC D series. Okay. So this was like a fucking top of the line CRT TV. This thing was like, you had this or you had a fucking Trinitron. Like, this thing is just a baller fucking TV. And I had a 36-inch one. It was this big black motherfucker. And if it weighed 3,000 pounds, that might not be enough. It was just... So when we moved it from my house, because I had it up in my bedroom when I lived with my parents. And when Tiff and I were first moving to Florida, right? In order to get this thing down the stairs, because I had like 2 or 3 people help me get it up the stairs. And when we were moving to Florida, nobody was coming to help. And like my stepdad didn't help. And my little brother and little sister were too young. So the way that we had to move this TV was we got it to the edge of the stair. Like, so we took it off the TV stand and put it on a blanket. And we would drag the blanket down the hallway till we got to the top of the stairs. And then Tiff would tilt the TV so that I could hold it and then slide like a 2-year-old, cheek first, step by step with this giant TV against my back. Because I couldn't fucking lift it, man. It was so goddamn heavy. Thing was insane.
Yeah, the Trinitron that I have it lives here. It's never coming out of this basement. If it dies, then that's the end of it. It's just staying here forever. It's ornamental.
It looked really, really nice. I'm trying to see like what they go for now. Like if I could even fucking find one of them. Not that I want one back. Like, I'm not interested in having that. Like, it's fine. I will go ahead and just play shmemulated games on a shmemulator. Let's see. On the eBay. I know this is thrilling podcasting, but I'm just curious now.
Utterly thrilled.
On the eBay, the 36-inch JVC TV CRT with remote, specifically listed for retro gaming at 240p, just sold on July 11th for $300.
That's a lot of dollars.
36-inch one. It's a lot of dollars for a fucking giant. It's
not
old TV.
A lot considering how much it cost when they were sold new, but still.
Oh, sure, but
for something just a few years ago you'd find laying on the side of the road.
Yeah, you still find them laying on the side of the road. Like, let's be honest.
I haven't seen one in ages.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I see them all the time around here. We have a couple apartment complexes around when I'm taking Tiff to work or like driving to like down on the White Horse Pike, like the town over from me. And there are apartment complexes specifically for the elderly folks. So there's constantly shit out on the curb because they're constantly dying.
The shit that we see out on the curb is
a weird like way to put it, but
we see a lot of like HD TVs on the curb, like all the time. Just the first generation ones that are now being replaced by the newer ones. Which is weird.
Yeah.
But like I said, they don't build them like they used to. My Trinitron right here next to me works just as good as it did the day I bought it, and the fucking Panasonic Plasma that's 14 years old is dead and or dying in way worse shape.
Crazy.
So you play any games this week?
Yeah, the new season of Snap started, so I've been working my way through that. Been dicking around with Pad, but mostly just playing through, still through Castlevania. I finished Castlevania 2 today. It took me a little bit longer to get to Castlevania 2 than I wanted to, because I was watching on YouTube, just, curious one night. Tiff had gone up to bed or whatever. I was like, let me see some Castlevania videos. I'm in the mood, right? And I saw somebody talking about Castlevania fan games, and one of them popped up called Castlevania Revamped, right? Get it? It's very funny. And it just came out 2 months ago, something like that. Total fan game. But what it does is it takes the Castlevania 1 and turns it into a Metroidvania. So it adds a bunch of shit. It changes the way Simon controls. There's a bunch of permanent upgrades and power-ups. It plays very, very, very much like later Castlevania games, right? Like when you upgrade your whip from the leather whip to the chain whip, it stays upgraded, right? It's like when you get the ice beam in fucking Metroid or whatever. It's fucking weird. It's really wild. It's hard to be looking at the Castlevania 1 sprites that I know so very, very well and see them behaving in a manner that is different from what they're supposed to be doing, because everything's faster. Simon certainly moves a lot faster. You can control his jump in the air, right? The way that you can in later Metroid or later Castlevania games, is you can jump and not just be tied into that animation. So I've been fucking around with that, and that's really cool. And it's free to download. You just go check it out. It's pretty cool. So I got lost in that for a couple days, and I was like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm supposed to be actually, I'm going through the actual Castlevania games. Son of a bitch. So I fired up Castlevania 2 and finished that off today. And man, I got to tell you, because I'm not going to lie, I played through that game with a strategy guide because I'm too old to try and remember just all of that shit. And I'm too old to be getting lost and all of that. But man, when you play that game with a walkthrough, and you just know what you're doing and you can just play and enjoy that game, it's really fucking good. It's a really good game. I know we shit on it a bunch, and it gets shit on for its obtuseness,
and it's the localization was the biggest problem. Simon's Quest is the bones of a very, very good game. It's got a few big flaws, great. Mostly in the how weird the localization was, where it doesn't really tell you what to do, where it's straight up impossible if you didn't have a Nintendo Power subscription back in the day. But it's a solid game.
Yeah, there's just and I was telling Tiff about it, when we were driving to one of the doctor's appointments. I'm like, so fucking man, it's just the most obtuse game that has just ever been made. Because what the fucking tornado, and you got to talk to the ferryman, and if you have the thing equipped, or if you don't have, but when you go back, and then you got to wait for him to go back, and then go back to the other screen, and that's just what a fucking pain in the ass that game is to figure out. But absolutely, if you haven't played Castlevania 2 in a while because of the obtuseness of it or whatever, just play with a walkthrough. I like the way Simon controls, I think, in that one the best. I like the way that game feels. The biggest disappointment to me in Castlevania 2 has always been the boss fights. They're pretty lame. A joke. Just a complete joke. Death is fucking super duper easy.
Dracula's
the big
ridiculous.
Fucking face. The big face, Who's the big face? Can't remember.
Carmilla?
Camilla? Or Carmilla? Something like
Carmilla.
That. Just incredibly easy, like a stupid easy fight. And then Dracula is ridiculous unless you do the flame thing. And you do the flame thing and he doesn't fucking move. Like, it's just, the boss fights in that game are so disappointing. And, like, when you wrap that up with all the obtuseness of it, like, in fact, like, I would go so far as to say, like, that whole Dracula's castle section where there's just literally nothing. You're just walking to get to Dracula. Like, there's no monsters in there. You got to bust a couple blocks to progress forward or downward or whatever. And then you get to Dracula, and it's like this fucking ridiculous, like, you just flame it. They're so disappointing. And that section in particular is so disappointing. The rest of the game around it is so very good. It's just a really fucking dope game. Really, really like it. So then, finishing off on that one, and the fucking soundtrack is really great in that one. Finishing off Castlevania 2. Next game on the list, which I started today, is Harmony of Dissonance. So now we're on to Juste Belmont.
I love that game.
I like that game quite a bit.
The dash,
I don't
you're
love,
always dashing with the L and R buttons. I remember that being a lot of fun. Soundtrack's
I don't love
weak.
That it's counterintuitive to the way my brain works, and a lot of games do it, and it's always something that, like, I have to relearn, because the L and the R buttons dash depending on the way that you're facing.
Yeah.
So it's not like R is not dash forward, L is not dash back. If you're facing left,
L is dash left, R is dash right.
And it always takes me a little bit to, like, hardwire that back into my brain as I'm playing through this one. Because, like, in my mind, R is dash forward, L is dash back. It doesn't matter which way I'm facing.
Right. You gotta have to play it like a racing game almost.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, and that's not necessarily a knock against it. That's just more of a me thing, you know, of like, I have a hard time with that, but I totally get it.
It is a little odd.
I still hate, and have hated since the first time I played it, the fucking blue thing following Juste the entire time. When you jump and he's got like the spirit trail, I'll fucking get rid of that. It's annoying.
Right. Well, I mean,
it's a silly thing to...
the whole purpose of that was readability, right? So much of that game was an overcorrection from Circle of the Moon.
Circle of the Moon. Yeah.
It's just like, all right, Circle of the Moon was a great game, but nobody could see it on the Game Boy Advance screen. So how are we gonna fix this? They just took everything they could into, you know, graphical fidelity and like whatever tricks they could to make the character's movement be more obvious on that shitty original GBA screen. Now playing it,
it's not a very good screen.
It was very helpful in the GBA. Like, I remember playing it on my original GBA, and that was very cool. But then you play it on an SP or anything newer, and you can actually see everything now. And now all that stuff is completely unnecessary and not spectacular. So,
yeah, no, it doesn't look great. I find it incredibly annoying.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's a really solid game. Really, really like that game. And that one, I think I've probably played through the least of like the modern Metroidvania stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because it's either that or Circle of the Moon that I've played the least.
I've definitely played Circle more than this one. I think I've only played Harmony of Dissonance once.
Yeah, I think once or twice, maybe. I don't even know that I've completed it twice. You know, because I definitely, when I first got the Castlevania, the Advance Collection, that's what it's called, right? The Advance Collection?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. When I first got that, like, I went through and put like an hour or two into each of the games, you know. And I've definitely played through Circle of the Moon a bunch because, I mean, I played through it the first time trying to fucking see it. And then as soon as
when the SP came out, I was like, shit, now I can see this.
Now I can play it. Like, I played through on the Game Boy player, right? On the TV, which wasn't great. Then played through it again on the SP and was like, oh, this is so much better. You know, I've played through that game like 3-4 times. And then, you know, the later ones more than that. But, man, Castlevania is really good. It's a great series of games. I'm very much enjoying them. And it's kind of neat jumping forward here to to get a little bit of the Metroidvania stuff before jumping back, because after this one, right, it goes back to Rondo of Blood.
Oh, okay.
So,
but even Rondo of Blood has a little bit of that exploratory element to it.
It's a little bit, right?
It's not
Rondo,
open exploration. It is, actiony, but it's got, branching paths and stuff like that.
Yeah. But it's Rondo and then Symphony of the Night. So by next week, I should be on to Symphony of the Night. Probably. I think, because Harmony's not a super long game. And Rondo's not a super long game. So.
I don't think I've ever finished Rondo. Yeah, anyway.
Really?
Yeah. I didn't love
really
it.
Good.
I really did not love that game as much as I expected to. But really I got to give it another proper go.
Yeah, Harmony of Dissonance, I'm looking on average, it's about 7.5 hours to finish, according to howlongtobeat.com. Rondo of Blood, 3.5 hours. So then we'll get to Symphony, and that is certainly more than that. I mean, not a ton longer.
Right.
Like Symphony of the Night.
Also, depending on how thorough you want to be with it. But yeah, Symphony you can...
I mean, 8 hours.
Symphony is exactly as long as it needs to be.
Yeah,
that is. It's wondrous.
It really is. I'm so looking forward to getting to it. I'm really, really looking forward to getting to Symphony of the Night. That game is just so fucking good.
It really, really is.
And then I get to finish with Dawn of Sorrow. I get to finish this playthrough with Arya and Dawn of Sorrow. Come on. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, those two back to back, doesn't get a lot better than that.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Let's see here. I played Nintendo World Championships. It's really the only video game I've had any time to play. And I had all my friends over to do the 8-player local multiplayer so that I could get that sussed out for my review. And I'm really, really glad I did, because I learned some things that I never really would have even noticed had I just based my review on, Ellie playing with her friend.
Right.
Putting it in a setting with a bunch of adults playing it. Again, the lack of any kind of difficulty, anything to level the playing field. Yeah, there's no way to level the playing field in this at all. So that is kind of... It is weird. Again, I don't know how you do it to this. I just don't know how you even do it to a game like this. But
sure,
for the most part, the friends that I had over were working with a somewhat similar skill set. Obviously, a couple of the guys were, 3 of them were really tying with each other a lot, or getting real close to each other, and then everybody else were also kind of coming in around the same time. The big thing that everybody pointed out, that there's no running score, right? So when you start, say you put this party mode together and everybody gets their random icons. So you're Donkey Kong, you're an eggplant wizard, et cetera, et cetera. So you keep those. No matter how many times you've finished doing whatever it is you're doing, you keep those. But there's no running tally of okay, you won this round. Congratulations, you're the winner. Now all the scores are back to 0. There is no, this player won this many games so far kind of a thing. So if you're going to play for a couple hours, you have to manually keep track of who's winning each game. So you'll do this set of all right, here's 4 challenges, right? So and everybody gets scores based on all 4 of those challenges, and then it adds up the scores, and that person wins. Hooray. But then once you move on to the next one, there is nothing that goes back and says, well, this person has won 4 challenges so far. There's no running anything. And that kind of sucks some of the joy out of having a competitive game like this. And it's especially weird to me because Big Brain Academy does it, Clubhouse Games does it. Those running tallies, they're in other Nintendo games. Even other Nintendo games that are specifically designed to be local party games, and it's just not here, it seems like a very strange oversight to me.
It's a bit
but
odd.
Also didn't even occur to me. The screens being super small, but again, that's not really... There's nothing you can do about that. If you're going to have 8 players on a single screen, there's only so much you can do.
Well, I mean, if you had everybody hook up their Game Boy Advance...
Right. Well, that's the thing. You can't do that, as far as I know. There is no local version of this. You couldn't have 8 people with Switches in the same room and play it this way. Like, it has to be on a television. There is no wireless local play.
Sure.
Which, you know, how often is that even going to come up, kind of a thing? So, like, that being an omission isn't a huge deal, but the tiny screens were somewhat problematic. But more than that was not everyone, but most of the people were having a problem with the fact that there weren't thicker borders between each screen. So, like, in playing a game like Balloon Fight or Kid Icarus, where they had absolutely no idea you could go off the edge of the screen and pop back up on the other side, they would get confused as to where their screen ended and the next screen began. Which is a problem I never even would have anticipated, but it happened to a handful of them, which I thought was really interesting. The not having any prior knowledge of these games was also a big issue for them. Like, I was there to be able to tell them the basics of what to do, but, like, not having any prior knowledge of stuff like Metroid or Kid Icarus or Balloon Fight, they were having really struggling to figure out how to actually play it in the first place, because the instructions they give you on screen, I thought looked perfectly adequate, but I had a hard time removing my own knowledge of this stuff from that, and apparently they're not, because half the players had some real difficulties figuring what the hell they're supposed to do.
I would have a hard time with Balloon Fight, I think.
Yeah, like, I had to explain
just
it to them.
Just thinking about it, like, that's a game that I have so little experience with.
Like I mentioned, it's basically Joust, and one of my friends got it. And then, like, the other players was like, think of it like swimming levels in Super Mario Brothers, and that's what made it make sense to them.
Yeah.
But then, of course,
that's a really good way to put it.
The actual process of popping the balloons and then kicking the dudes, like, that was a whole other thing. That was like, well, now what do I do? I pop their balloon. Now what do I do? Oh, you have to run into them again. Like, there should be some sort of... There should be a tutorial on these, like, because there's no instruction manual on each of these games. It's This assumes you know these games inside and out, or at least the basics of them. And no one in the room besides me had ever played Kirby's Adventure before, so they're like explaining that you had to suck in the character and swallow it to get their power, and then press the B button to use it. Like, it just wasn't connecting. Like, it just was problematic. Excitebike went pretty well, except one of my friends just could not wrap her head around the idea that you shouldn't turbo all the time because you're going to keep overheating. Just couldn't wrap her head around that.
Well, because that's not a thing modern games really do anymore.
And also,
back in the day, you had to, like, manage that kind of shit, but, like, modern game design doesn't really work that way.
And also, it's hard to manage it on such a small screen with 8 players, because as you can imagine, you don't hear the overheat sound on every single screen, you know? Like, it's because then it would just be horrible, a cacophony of evil, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of a tough thing. So when the screen's that small, it's hard to pay attention to the little meter at the bottom that fills up. And then there's also the fact that you aren't always necessarily going to hear yourself overheating. So again, it's one of those things that's just kind of baked right in. But also, I don't know how you would solve that problem other than the way that they kind of sort of did it. It
doesn't sound like a game for casuals.
Well, that's the thing.
And I think
they had a lot of fun. Even with these problems, they were still having a lot of fun. Not quite as much fun as Everybody 1-2 Switch, when I had a whole parade of people over here to play that one. But they were having a good time. Like, nobody had, like, okay, this is... Greg,
I'm angry.
Greg got very angry. Actually, everybody got really angry at Super Mario Bros. Lost Levels because that is a hateful game.
Yeah, it is. That game is made to piss you off.
The game is designed to be awful. But yeah, everyone had a good time, except Karen. Also, Karen hated this game. She just hated it. But that was like an anxiety-based thing. Like she just hated. She felt like it was embarrassing to not be good at these games, and like she does not have a good time with that kind of a situation.
Which is absurd.
A little bit.
I get it, but it's absurd. The big question then is that, okay, everybody had a good time. Did everybody have a good enough time to buy it? Because that's ultimately the multiplayer, like, I'm just thinking about it from, like, your review perspective.
Right. Yeah, that is the question. If you have it's going to depend on the person, right? Because not everybody has to have it, right? So not everybody would need to buy this game, but somebody would need to buy this game.
Right. Because, like, to go back to Wii Sports, right? The first time you did the bowling, everybody who played that was like, I got to have it.
Right. I need this.
This
wasn't necessarily
this is so
that. Yeah, this
fun.
They didn't want to.
I don't think anything ever will be. Again,
right.
Like if we're being honest, the Wii Sports, that introduction, the way people just took to that platform for that particular game, I don't think that's the kind of thing, like, that's lightning in a bottle shit. You know, that's
right.
Like, that's just never going to happen again. But did anybody walk out of your house being like, oh, I got to get this?
Nobody walked out of the house saying, I'm going to buy this. But almost everybody, with the exception of Karen, was like, I would absolutely play this again. So,
well,
that was kind of cool.
That's not nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's not nothing, because you really just need one person that you know to have the game in order for it to be a good party game. But of course, the controllers were also a bit of an issue, right? So I have 2 of the NES controllers, and I gave that to my 2 friends who haven't played video games basically since the NES era. But everybody else was using
the shittiest of your friends. Got it.
But everybody else was using Joy-Cons, and the Joy-Cons were kind of problematic for not the reason that you'd think, right? So it was Metroid that was the biggest problem with the Joy-Cons, because in order to switch on and off missiles, you don't just press the one button. You had to do a button combination to do that.
Okay.
You had to press, like, because a Joy-Con either has the plus or the minus button, and you would think just pressing that button would be enough. But you'd have to press that button and one of the shoulder buttons at the same time to toggle turning the missiles on and off. And
instead of just one of the shoulder buttons.
Exactly. Or the plus or the minus button. Like, you had to do this combination, and that was a big hurdle for all of us, even when I was playing it, because I hadn't played that game with just the Joy-Cons before. So I'm trying to talk everybody through it. It's like, yeah, you just press this button, because that's what I assumed it was. But it's not.
Because why wouldn't it be?
Exactly. Why wouldn't it be? And I have to assume it had something to do with, because if you're playing with a Joy-Con in single player, that button will bring up a menu. But
that's annoying.
Yeah. So that kind of sort of makes sense, but also it would be strange for them to change the way missiles would be selected in multiplayer as opposed to single player. So on one hand, I get that, but I also don't think there's anything tied to just one of the shoulder buttons on the Joy-Con. Having it be a button combination was problematic.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, I don't know. That was weirdly problematic. But it was a really, really interesting evening. Like, there were the complaints and the problems that people ran into were not the ones that I thought they would. So it was a very interesting night. It's a weird game. I really think what it does really well, but it seems like it's missing. It dropped the ball on a couple of pretty obvious things. And that's in both single player and multiplayer. Like, it just doesn't quite knock it out of the park on all the things that it does.
It weirdly I was much more excited for it because it's definitely not a game for me. Like, and I didn't necessarily think it was a game for me when I saw the first trailers for it, but I was much more excited for that game until I started hearing people talk about it. And I was like, oh yeah, this is definitely not for me. This is not a thing I need in my life.
Now,
which is a shame because, like, I look at it and I want it.
Right. But
because it's the nostalgia of the World Championships and like all of that stuff around it. But it's just not. I would never do it.
Yeah.
No, I'm not.
So the other thing that kept coming up was, right, so I'm me. I know why the games that are in this thing are in it and why the games that aren't in it. But
right.
They didn't know.
Why isn't Ninja Gaiden in this?
They're like, where's Castlevania? Where's Rad Racer? Like, well, those games aren't made by Nintendo. Like, well, they're Nintendo games. Like, I played them on Nintendo. Like, they don't understand the concept of, like, well, why isn't Mega Man there? Why aren't...
All right, look, Grandma.
Where's Bubble Bobble? But then there's other stuff like, where's Tetris? And specifically, like, they one of my friends knew, and I think they knew enough to know that what was it? Tetris and Rad Racer were the other two games, or maybe I told everybody that, and they're like, "Oh, I know those games.
Right.
Why aren't they on there?" Well, Rad Racer is Square, and Tetris is the Tetris Company, and so
you would think they would have at least gotten those two.
You would think, right? Because
like,
they have enough of a relationship with Tetris Company. Tetris 99 is a thing. The Game Boy version of Tetris is on NSO. Like, the fact that Tetris isn't in there, and Rad Racer, come on. Was Square really going to ask for so much money? Never mind. They absolutely would. They 100% would. They 150% would have been like, fine, we want 50% of the profits from the game to have Rad Racer in
fucking
there.
Stop it. No, they wouldn't.
Square, you better fucking believe they would be like, absolutely, give us half.
That's absurd.
Fuck off.
Now, stop it. Half for Rad, you, sir. You exaggerator. You exaggerator.
Why else has that game never shown up anywhere ever again? Square clearly wants too much money for it.
They lost the code?
Nah.
They don't fucking have it?
Square's a bunch of scuzzbags.
I mean, they very well might be, but I get that from an outsider perspective of, like, thinking back to, like, ooh, I wonder if my Nintendo games are on there. Not thinking about your Nintendo games being published by Konami or Data East or whoever. Like, why isn't Karnov on this? God damn it.
Yeah, where's Bad Dudes?
Where's Bad Dudes?
But, like,
where's Journey to Silius?
All the games they would bring it up, I'd be like, man, that would be great in here. Why isn't Bubble Bobble here? God damn it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
interesting. I don't know. Maybe like there's some DLC planned for the future. You know, I don't know. This is definitely not your game of the year. I think is
definitely not
safe to say.
All right, we're trucking along here. I did want to there was a couple of things I wanted to get to. We had one message in our Discord from Trashman that I thought was worth mentioning. So Trashman says, just caught the June, July, 10, 20, 30, 40. I like some of the changes implemented, but would suggest against docking points to a system if a game was previously ported to a competitor. Oftentimes, the hype of a system finally getting a game elevated its status in a way. You could also be making an assessment with bad info, like saying The Incredible Hulk was already on Super NES when Genesis got it, but it's actually the other way around. Did I say that? I don't know if he's just using that as an example or if I fucked something up. Which, is entirely possible. And that's a good point. So yes, docking, not that we're actually awarding points to systems per se, but yes, it's a good point to probably not count that against other platforms. To moving on, he says, I think focusing on the highlights for each system is the best way to compare months. If you say X system had 50 releases and follow that up with most were Japanese shovelware, it detracts from the initial statement. Yeah, but I think I personally think that's useful information because that's kind of a thing that would get marketed back in the day. It'd be like, we have 150 games, and then that's a great selling point. But then the vast majority of them are nonsense or shovelware. So I do think that's kind of one of the
one of the points of the 10, 20, 30, 40. And maybe we've gotten away from it in the many years that we've been doing it now. But like originally, kind of one of the ideas was to present just kind of like a snapshot of what the video game industry looked like at that time. Right. So commenting on the fact that there were indeed 150 releases, but 90% of them were shit, is indicative of what gaming was like, 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
Yeah. So I feel that that's important information for me that works for me. I understand where you're coming from, Trash Man, but I will disagree on that point. He goes on to say, I can't recall if it was mentioned in one of these episodes, but Dan was talking about Dark Forces being a Doom clone. Offense taken, but he's half right. There were a ton of Doom Star Wars WAD patches coming out, so LucasArts took it upon themselves to create the Jedi engine and grab market share. As somebody who briefly had Pokemon... This I found fascinating. As someone who briefly had Pokemon Box, you could use it to get eggs, which would hatch into Pokemon with moves that you normally wouldn't teach them. You could also use it to play Ruby and Sapphire on your TV without the Game Boy player. That is fascinating information. I did not know that.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
And as I said in the Discord, I will take being half right.
Yeah.
That game is Doom clone.
It's Doom clone enough.
It certainly is.
And he said, Kris mentioned that when he got Street Fighter 2, it was expensive, which was true. The game was like $20 more than other releases, but I would also posit most of us got way more value out of it than other titles. 100% agree. I spent extra money on Street Fighter 2 for Super Nintendo, and I spent it again on Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and I don't regret that decision at all.
No, not even a little bit.
Yeah, they were... I got so much playtime out of those games, it was ridiculous. So, yeah, Hundo P, again, as the kids say.
For sure.
And then he says, on the topic of game costs, Revengers of Vengeance for $100 is not a bad deal. Sega CD games were
fucking name.
It really is.
So good.
We're $60 and Christmas was $94. That's $126 today. Don't buy the argument that you'd be getting it new. No one was buying games in '94 to have them sit on a shelf for 30 years.
That's probably fair.
Yeah.
All
right. Well, thanks for the info, Trash Man. That was a very informative message. Now we did get another piece of mail. Isn't this fun? We got another email from Devin Cooley. He says, Hello again, Kris and Dan. You know something? It was pretty surreal reading your reply. It's like hearing from the future. I had originally planned on waiting until I got through an entire year of podcasts before I wrote it again, but man, all of a sudden it feels so much longer when that idea is sitting in the back of my head and I hear something I want to chime in on. Usually I'm just too busy and don't find the time, but this time something happened and I just had to. The episode is 221, well into the 10-20-30 section. The inciting incident? Parasite Eve. Now, I really don't have a ton to say about this game, as I have unfortunately played very, very little of it. You know why? Because the exact scene you described in your recollection of the game, here's your quote. You know what? I remember loving Parasite Eve, but to this day, I don't think I could tell you anything about it besides a really, really grotesque rat mutation FMV that haunts my nightmares to this day. Kris Randazzo, Stars Gamer Podcast. You know, 100% right. That fucking rat creeped me out. Anyway, he says, that scene is as far as I got. I am not ashamed to admit that I simply could not handle that game. It was sometime between 99 and 2001, around 9th or 10th grade for me, and it was just too much. That rat turned inside out. I thought to myself, if that's how this game is going to start, popped the disc out of my PlayStation, walked it across the street, back to my friend's house, and gave it back to him. Today, though, that game is on my list of games to pick up and defeat. I've become so much more desensitized over the years. PS1 gross mutant graphics don't hold a candle to the live-action The Boys or that amazing Invincible animated adaptation. Anyway, now that I've given up trying to
they certainly do not.
Yeah. Now that I'll keep myself the arbitrary, wouldn't it be neat if I sent one email for every year of the podcast I got through? Expect to hear from me again a lot sooner as I catch up in real time, and the things you discuss become more and more current. But for now, and then he asked me questions about Waveback, so I'll address those another time. But thank you, Devin. That was a nice email.
That was. We're great.
And if anyone else wants to contact us, please do. We love hearing from people. But with that, it is time for us to take ourselves a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about week-old news and what's been going on here at Stone Age. You're listening to the Stone Age Gamer podcast from geekade.com. Stick around. And now here's a quick look at what's new from us and our partners at geekade.com.
First up, the most famous Bobcat in video games is back! Or at least he will be when the all-new, all-different Bubsy in the Perfect Collection releases sometime in the not-too-distant future. In the meantime, Matt and Kris have gathered together to listen... You're just a mean person. To the music of Bubsy's very first game for the Super NES.
Why am I a mean person?
Because you made Matt do this.
No, this was his pick.
No, Matt's a mean person then. I take it back. I love Matt. Matt can do no wrong. You're still an asshole, though. Some say it's the only redeeming quality in the game. Some say it's more just creating nonsense. I don't think you have to wonder where I fall on that gratuitous rainbow spectrum. Some say you can never have too much 16-bit synthesized banjo. No matter what your thoughts are, you should absolutely listen to Waveback episode 176, Bubsy in Claws Encounters of the Third Kind.
Delicious. Yeah, our last episode of Waveback was Stunt Race FX, which was my pick, which was just littered with banjo music. And I don't think Matt knew that there were going to be at least 2 songs of banjo plucking goodness in Bub's Pursuit. It was a very stupid and fun episode. Next, on an all-new Turning Tracks, it was Matt's pick, and he chose Vast, in all caps. Why? I have no idea. In fact, I've never heard of this band before in my life, and what's more, we haven't even recorded the episode yet. That's happening tomorrow night, so I really have no frame of reference to even write this ad. Matt and I could say any number of things. We could talk about chicken McNuggets, and really, why aren't more things at McDonald's prefaced with the whole Mick thing anymore? Not that I eat at McDonald's, my daughter does. She loves McNuggets. I went to McDonald's to pick up food for her the other day, and things have changed since the last time I've been inside of McDonald's. It's all desolate and futuristic looking. Lots of wafts of sadness. I hated it. Anyway, don't miss Turning Tracks episode 22, Vast.
Yep. Nailed it.
Yeah, nailed it.
All right, so this next one says Dean, so I'm going to pepper in some racism. Hold on.
Fixed it.
Finally, have you ever wanted to play a weird game of dodgeball? I'm trying hard not to now. Have you ever wanted to play a weird game of dodgeball with a ghost, a penguin? So a Jew, a rabbi, and a priest are playing dodgeball. Ghost, a penguin, a kid in a monster suit, and who the heck knows what other nationalities might be in this game. I know I have, because I'm Dean, and I am racist. Jesus, that's not nice. Dean's not racist, I'm just fucking with him. I'm surprised I'm not doing it right now. These aren't just hello... Whoa, where the fuck did that come from? I should reread these, or pre-read these before I record. These aren't just Hello Kitty knockoffs, no. These are the stars of the Hebereki games, a word I know how to say because sometimes I listen when Kris talks. You know, Euphoria in the U.S. Sunsoft platforming at its finest. Playing dodgeball on the Super NES. There's also pizza from the 80s and bedridden world domination to discuss in the latest episode of Weekend Rental, episode 183, The Gamers Throwdown. See, here's the problem, Kris. I always do the first commercial kind of serious, And then by the time we get to the third one, I've forgotten that I'm supposed to be serious. And I feel like I always shortchange the weekend rental guys. So here, going forward, can we put the weekend rental podcast commercial first? So that they get the one where I don't go. And now I'm going to say some dumb shit.
I will do my best to do that for you.
Okay.
And for all this,
because I love those guys.
Partners, be sure to keep your eyes on geekade.com. All right, we are back, and it is time to talk about what's new at Stone Age Gamer. And it's been an interesting week. They sent me the TrogTech shells, the N64 shells. TrogTech did the Kickstarter for them. The folks back at the shop got the shells, I think, last week, but they sent them out to me to do some video stuff on. And I gotta say, they're really freaking impressive. I have not held the cheapo ones on AliExpress, so I can't do a direct comparison, but the color matching on Atomic Purple and Extreme Green is flawless, which is super awesome to see. I've opened all of them except for two, so I haven't seen the blue one and the two-tone. The two-tone was the acid thing, like it was like half bright yellow and half black. But the two-tone red and black one, I think, is my favorite one. The cherry cola one. They're really, really cool looking. And
that's awesome.
Taking apart an N64 is doable. It's a little bit more complicated than taking apart an NES. But I was able to figure it out. So I'm supposed to be putting together a how-to video on how to actually take these things apart for TrogTech that they're going to use. And I'm going to be working on that tomorrow. But they're really neat. That's the thing. The lights at the end of the tunnel. We're finally going to get those shells for sale at some point in the not-too-distant future.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But anyway, that means it is time for my favorite segment, your favorite segment, everyone's favorite segment. Strap yourselves in for Week Old News. Welcome to Week Old News, where we talk about all the news that was new a week ago. And, oh my goodness. Yeah, they didn't overturn that call. Anyway, they just started playing baseball.
Technically,
again.
that counts.
Wait a second,
this will be about a week old.
Yeah, they just threw somebody out at first. The Phillies just tied it up, but they didn't overturn that call, and I don't understand why. I'm not mad about it, but anyway. First up, from Nintendo Life. Lego Animal Crossing Fly with Dodo Airlines, a great little set with one glaring omission. This I only put in here because
it's $900.
When they announced the Animal Crossing sets, I said the only thing I want is Tangy. Tangy's my favorite. I would never let her leave my village under any circumstances. Tangy is mine. I love Tangy. She's an orange cat that's literally an orange. Which is perfect. So this set has not only Tangy, but the Dodo Airlines. That's really cool. It's the
that's pretty great.
It's the airport, Tangy, come on, what's his name? What's the character's name? I can't remember his name. The Dodo.
Rudolph.
Wilbur.
Okay.
And a plane. It's neat. It's a nice little set. It's $37.99. That's too much.
Yeah, it's a lot. Legos are expensive, man.
It's a little set. It's not a big set for $37.99. How many pieces is this? That's the model number. I don't know how many pieces it is. I don't see it clearly on the outside of the box, but it's not a lot. It's 3 bags. This is not a. So
Legos are fucking expensive.
They're too goddamn expensive. I don't want to drop $40 for a little minifigure of Tangy. I cannot make myself do it. As much as I'd like to, I'd love to own it, but no, absolutely not. I'm mad.
Christmas is coming.
there are so many things I want more than this for Christmas.
Sure. I get that.
Moving on. Retro RGB posts 240p test suite updates, Wii, GameCube, and N64. I really didn't know that this was a multi-platform situation. Artemio, I'm not really sure how to pronounce that. We carry their I think it's theirs, the 240p test suite for Neo Geo on our site. And what it is, it's like a way to like get your colors and stuff straight. Right, so this is the this is different. This is Junker HQ, the one that we carry. Okay, so this is a totally different dude, I think. Am I crazy? I guess I just don't know nearly enough about this to say for sure, but there's a 240p test suite for Wii, GameCube, and N64 apparently. Do these exist already, or are they coming? Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'll post a link to the Retro RGB article for those that are interested. There's just one of those. These are one of those things that exist that I find relentlessly fascinating. Like, here is a cartridge you can get for an old system that'll help you adjust the colors on your TV properly. Which
it's kind of weird.
It's kind of
cool.
It's super cool. It's definitely not for me. Maybe if there was a good way to do that for modern HD TVs for adjusting colors for my Switch.
Some of us have been having some problems
with that lately. But no, it's a super cool thing, and the retro community continues to be awesome.
You remember when that shit used to just come in DVDs?
Yeah.
They would have the little fucking paper film that you would hold up to your TV. Like, hey, your TV looks like shit. Calibrate it a little bit.
Oh, those are the days. Push Square reports Bungie accused of overselling itself to Sony, promising success it couldn't deliver. I don't know what else to say Sony. About that.
I gotta be I gotta be honest with you.
Yeah.
That's on Sony.
100%. That's on them. That's I don't know, man. that Bungie deal seems like it has not been working out well for Sony. And on one hand, is there a degree of legality to it? Like overselling yourself? Like, is that a thing that you can get in trouble for? Or I have no idea. I don't even know enough to fucking speculate. Same here. I really don't. But I do know that let's see. Quote, I think Sony overpaid for Bungie, an ex-Bungie source told GameFile. I think Bungie sold things they were just not able to deliver. It's a damning quote when you consider the $3.6 billion buyout fee, on top of how Bungie has seemingly handled its business since the acquisition. It gets even crazier, though, with one source stating that the alternative to a sale could well have been insolvency.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
That seems pretty good. But again, does it though? Because so much of these gigantic fucking games, we've talked about it kind of ad nauseum at this point, but Destiny had to be this massive live service success and one of the biggest, most well-performing live service games of all time in order to just make a profit.
Yeah.
Not to make a ton of fucking money and be oh my god, this is such a great game, but even just to make back the money they spent making that fucking game. Between that and the first one, it had to be this gigantic thing. And it's just not a sustainable business practice. It just isn't.
Why do we know that?
Well, because as much as it is annoying
armchair
to
quarterbacks,
hear,
it's
well, yeah, sure. But as much as it's annoying to hear when you're in that position, the customer is always right. And we know that because the customers said this game is not what we want. You know, it's that kind of hindsight, that armchair quarterbacking, you know, and like it is a bunch of people, I think, that were just so pumped up by the idea of how much money they were going to make.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just that you look at what mobile games pull in for their $1 and $2 little transactions or their $5, $10 transactions. You know, you look at things like Fortnite. You look at these games that are these continual fucking, I can't think of the word. I'm tired. Environments for people to play in. And then you just add the cosmetics and all the other stuff. And those games are just making money hand over fist, you know. And where I think a lot of these companies got it wrong, and they were like, all right, but like Fortnite just gives the game away for free. That's fucking stupid. So we'll charge $60 for Destiny, you know, when it first comes out. And on top of that, we'll get all the other live service.
Then we'll make all the rest of it.
Too, and then we'll make all, you know.
The money prints itself.
Well, and it just, Halo is an Xbox thing. Bungie is like, when you look at the studios that are owned by Microsoft and by Sony, it's weird that Bungie is owned by Sony. It's weird that Double Fine is owned by Microsoft.
It's weird that a lot is owned by Microsoft, but yeah, those in particular. Sure.
But like
the Bungie
those
owned
two
by Sony
stand
thing
out.
It was such a specific move, you know? It was such a like, no, we're doing this to hurt Microsoft. Like, it was such a reactionary thing. And
we're doing this in reaction to the Activision acquisition, which isn't going well for Microsoft either. Because of course it's not. Because how could it have?
Because everything's broken and I want to go to bed.
And at some point, Grand Theft Auto 6 is going to come out and make all the fucking money without being owned by anybody.
How weird would it be if that game bombed?
God, I
can't imagine a world where it would happen. It seems impossible, but like...
It can't bomb because enough people are going to buy it on day one. Enough people are going to buy it day one to where it turns a profit.
It would be the weirdest thing in the world if that game somehow didn't make money. It would be the weirdest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. Go Nintendo reports. I love this. Nintendo shares updated software sales for GameCube and 3DS. What?
Hey, Microsoft, we heard you're having a hard time. You want to see how many GameCubes we sold? Eat our dicks.
The number of total GameCube games. The number of total GameCube games sold as of December 2022 is 205.58 million units. You might think that number wouldn't change over the years. However, it's actually 10,000 units higher than the previous number, which was reported in March of 2009. Love it.
That's awesome.
3DS, that doesn't surprise me too terribly. That system isn't that old. There's still new games out there. What the GameCube one, like, just awesome. Okay.
How are they tracking that? Is there like somebody in a store that like calls Nintendo like, you guys are never going to believe it. I just fucking sold a copy of 1080 Avalanche. Add that to your list, boys. All right. If anybody buys anything else, I'll call you back.
Oh, moving on. Time Extension reports Dragon Quest Super NES prototype worth $50,000, quote, lost for good. This one I hate.
Okay.
Let's see. Over the past year, this is the quote from somebody on Twitter. So, sorry, at Sack Chief. So over the past year, there was a supposed prototype card on eBay for an English version of Dragon Quest Tornado Mystery Dungeon for Super NES, and the guy wanted $50,000 for it. Well, he claims he sold it to a private collector recently, so now you can say it's lost for good.
Yeah, that sucks if it's true.
Yeah.
Or
There's
nobody
nothing-
fell for a scam. It's one of the two. Like,
Yeah.
it's either of those things. Either
Yeah.
way, it sucks.
Somebody fell for a scam, but it's certainly far from unheard of for a private collector to just hoard something. Like, well, this is
no, that
mine
doesn't
and only
happen.
mine forever.
Yeah, I've never
fuck
heard of that
historical preservation or anything like that. Just fuck it. This is mine.
That seems... who would do such a thing? That seems like a weird choice to make.
Well, there are folks out there who believe that if other people have access to the thing, then their thing is inherently worth less. And, that's what's important, is that their thing be worth as much as possible.
That's right.
Anyway, time extension again. Random crazy modder adds a CRT screen to the Game Boy. What?
Why
the
not?
battery life is 2 minutes and 5 seconds. Oh my god,
Yeah.
let's see. Modder
That is a
James-
good use of time.
Yes, indeed. Modder James Channel is infamous for his harebrained and slightly insane video game mods. He's the brains behind the unhinged Nintendo PlayStation, and his latest project is no exception. What is the Nintendo PlayStation? Oh my god. Oh my god, I've never seen this before.
Oh, you've never seen that thing? Yeah.
This
It's
is
great.
hysterical. You put a PlayStation disc in loose and it just spins around like a saw blade sticking out of the Super Nintendo
great.
port. Oh my god.
I wish I knew
love
how
it.
to do shit like that. I
love
really
it.
do.
Anyway, his latest project is no exception. He has fitted a Game Boy with a portable CRT screen. Taking a brand new CRT screen purchased from AliExpress, James does his usual slapdash job of fusing two things together, a process which is, of course, completely intentional and very amusing / scary to watch. Cutting the case, repositioning circuit boards, and generally covering the device in lots of hot glue.
That's awesome.
I just love this so much. It's so stupid looking. The finished product is completely insane. 4 AA batteries. There it is. A functioning CRT. He even wrote over the part where it says dot matrix with stereo sound. He just wrote in Sharpie CRT over it. Says,
That's
quote,
the kind of madness I can get behind.
quote, I think I made a game, man. This is my favorite
Yep.
story of the week. Far and away.
That fucking rules.
Fucking miraculous. Oh, but the weird just keeps on coming. Go Nintendo reports somehow Everybody 1-2 Switch was Australia's best-selling game last week.
That's not surprising.
What? What do you mean? How is it outsold Grand Theft Auto 5 last week in Australia?
Australia's a weird fucking place.
Clearly. I mean, look, everybody
There's
1-2
nothing
Switch.
you could say about Australia where I would be like, oh, that doesn't sound right. I'd be like, no, that tracks.
Let's see. The latest weekly sales charts for Australia have come in, and believe it or not, Everybody 1-2 Switch has taken the #1 position on the sales charts. You might think this has something to do with a big sale at various Aussie retailers, but there seems to be zero evidence of such a sale taking place. Obviously, something spurred on these massive sales, but the details on that remain a mystery for now.
Because it's Australia. Don't try to figure it out.
Units it moved. It's so weird. So weird. I love it.
Makes perfect sense.
Ah, boy. Oh, this is a neat one. Nintendo Life reports rare Nintendo Dolphin GameCube prototype reemerges on social media. There is somebody out there on the Twitterverse, console variant, says we have detailed pictures of one of the first physical GameCubes ever made. It was called the Nintendo Dolphin. This GameCube is so rare that we were not allowed to upload it on the internet. Until now, more pictures soon. Yeah, this thing's wild. I mean, I remember hearing about the Dolphin.
Yeah.
It being codenamed, but I didn't know there was an actual, physical prototype of it, but that's what this appears to be. It's really neat looking, too. It's got a different logo on it. Says Nintendo Dolphin. It's just kind of funky looking, but I'm going to keep my eyes peeled to see if we get more pictures of it, because that is
that's cool.
Super awesome and weird.
Yep, I dig it.
Yeah. I love when weird shit gets found. Huzzah. Oh, this is a fun one. IGN reports Balatro creator hates the thought of their game being sold to a casino enough to forbid it in their will.
Yeah, I saw that. I was like, fuck yeah, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah. Do it. Do it to it. Yeah, and really there's not much more to say. He put it in his will. This game is never allowed to be turned into a gambling thing, an actual gambling thing. So.
Because that is just not what it is.
Yeah. And I can see it.
It's such a interesting game. You really got to check it out one of these days.
I do. It's on the list. It really is. Yeah. Ugh. Oh boy. And then our last story comes from Time Extension. As GameStop erases Game Informer from history, fans are preserving its legacy online. After we reported last week that Game Informer had the plug pulled out from it, they basically just nuked it. Their whole online backups just killed it. They deleted their Twitter account, like all of it.
It's weird,
but it is weird. I'm not really all that concerned. There's so many Game Informers out there. I don't think think anyone's ever going to have a hard time tracking down and scanning every issue of Game Informer. Like, I just don't think that's going to be a problem. But it's also kind of a bitch that they have to do this kind of work now. Looks like at RetroMags, RetroMags is such a great resource. I use this on my my history videos all the time. I mean, obviously, when I'm doing Nintendo Power, I can just go look at my stuff. But if I don't have to like snap pictures of my old magazines, they have scans of just about everything. It's a wonderful site. But they say it's not public facing yet. But after 2 hours, and that is with automation, I am almost ready. Just need to sync the files up and unhide the category. So Game Informer being added to RetroMags is a wonderful thing. And I'm also hoping to hear more about the Video Game History was .org that they announced, a couple of months ago, their searchable library, which I'm chomping at the bit for. I really, really, really want to be able to mess around with that and look up in magazines, like, what was the actual first publication to report on X game? You know, like, I'm dying for that to be something that I have at my fingertips, because that's just such a neat little piece of history that would be very useful in the things that I do.
Yeah,
but
it would.
Yeah, that's all I got. I forgot to mention that over the weekend I did the Karate Kid marathon, and the next Karate Kid is a piece of shit. But I also wound up watching the 2010 Karate Kid, which was pointless.
That's the fucking Jackie Chan.
The Jackie Chan one. Yeah.
Yeah. It is a movie.
It's a movie. It tries to be Karate Kid beat for beat, but not. And it just... Yeah, it's weird. It's not like it's bad. It just doesn't do anything better than the original, so it just feels ultimately pointless. But that was a weird sidetrack. We are going to take ourselves another break, and when we come back, we are going to be performing an interview. Actually, we're going to tell you about the interview we already performed with Rumbleminze, who does some really cool NES to Super NES ports on his computer, presumably. Probably not on an Amigas. Anyway, you're listening to the Stone Age Gamer podcast from Geekade.com. Stick around. Hi everyone, Kris here. Podcast listening is free, but podcast creation is not. That's why the Geekade Patreon exists. In an effort to help us pay the bills, we've got a Patreon page set up where you can gain access to our monthly podcast topic schedule, get early access to many of our shows, and more. If you'd like to help support Geekade and keep these shows running week after week, head over to the Geekade Patreon page, linked in the show notes of this very podcast.
We are Safe at Home, the leading dog rescue in the heart of New Jersey. Are you searching for a loyal companion, a dog that will bring love and joy to your home? Look no further than Safe at Home. At Safe at Home, we believe in giving every dog a second chance. We rescue, rehabilitate, and find loving forever homes for dogs in need, right here in the Garden State. Our dogs are ready to make a lasting impact on your life. Each one has a unique story, a wagging tail, and an incredible capacity for love. When you adopt from Safe at Home, you're not just gaining a pet, you're becoming a part of our family. Our dedicated team ensures a seamless adoption process, providing ongoing support and guidance. With New Jersey's beautiful parks, beaches, and trails, you and your new furry friend will have endless opportunities for adventures and cherished memories. Safe at Home relies on the support of compassionate individuals like you. Your donations and volunteer work enable us to continue saving lives and finding forever homes for these amazing dogs. Join us in creating a safer, happier community for dogs in New Jersey. Together we can make a difference and give every dog the chance to feel safe at home. Visit our website or call us now to learn about how you can be a part of the Safe at Home mission. Safe at Home, because every dog deserves to be loved and protected. www.safeathomerescue.org.
Hey there, Stone Age Gamer fans. Are you also fans of Star Trek? Well, maybe you'd like to listen to yet another podcast, maybe yet another Star Trek podcast. You see, me and my friend Majid, every other week, we talk about the original series, we talk about Strange New Worlds, we talk about Star Trek. We have a third friend, Brad, who's sometimes here, but he hasn't been. I don't know why. So come on over and listen to our show, yet another Star Trek podcast at yetanotherstpod.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
When you hear the words cross-stitch, you probably think of a grandma lovingly making a Christmas stocking, a picture of a lighthouse, or maybe a Bible verse with flowers. But that's not what we do at Shoot the Moon Stitches. We take the old-fashioned art of cross-stitch and pair it with contemporary themes and imagery to create striking works of art that make the perfect gift for anyone who grew up with the internet and has a wicked sense of humor and an appreciation for pop culture. From cult favorite TV shows and movies, to retro video games, to TikTok trends. If it's made you smile, chances are we've stitched it. You can shop our selection of art and gifts by going to Etsy.com and searching Shoot the Moon Stitches. For all your fun, feminist, fandom fiber art needs, visit Shoot the Moon Stitches.
Okay, we are back. We have returned, and we're going to transfer you over to our interview with Rumbleminze. It was a very interesting interview with a very interesting fella who does some very interesting things with old NES games, making them work on Super Nintendo, and now we not only know sort of how he does it, but why he does it, because that was actually a question of ours at several points during our lives. So without further ado, here is us talking to Rumbleminze. All right, everybody, we are here with a special guest, Mr. Rumble.minze.org. Rumbleminze? Is it two words or it's one word, right? Rumbleminze?
It's one word. It's got a history in a very terrible alcohol that I no longer drink that I don't recommend anybody ever partake in. But yeah, one word.
It's not great.
I was going to ask. I was going to ask where what kind of name? Is it Irish Rumbleminze? I've never heard it before.
It's a play on Rumpleminze, which was choices I made when I was younger. That was not good choices. And it's the name I actually used in the first MMO I played, which was City of Heroes. So my superhero run around beat people up name was Rumbleminze, and I just kind of kept it ever since.
Huh. See, I always assumed it was a wrestling reference.
Mm-hmm. You know toothpaste, Kris? Like the really strong
toothpaste?
No, like really strong peppermint toothpaste. Like, what's that three-colored shit? AIM?
Aquafresh or AIM? Yeah, okay.
Aquafresh, something like that. That, but alcohol. And you have now had Rumpleminze.
Ew.
Yeah, that's the right reaction.
It is a horrendous product. I mean, it works as like a mixer in certain things. I guess. I don't know. You gotta be a real man to fuck with Rumbleminze.
The good thing that came out of it was a great character name, though. I think it's worked well for me, so I'm gonna stick with it.
I think that's a great idea. It's memorable. So it's memorable. It's relatively easy to pronounce. I didn't know it was an alcohol, so it all seems to work. So you're here.
Glad I didn't go with my bad choices. It's been like Mad Dog 2020. Be like, ugh, gross. Kind of name is that? Anyway, sorry.
I'm gonna start calling you Slut Cancer.
Oh, please do. Oh, SC.
Good old Slut Cancer. Slut Can for short.
Good God.
I'm so glad I listened to the podcast from last week before that conversation, so I understood the reference.
Yeah, that would be a hell of a thing to just dump on a guest, Kris.
Yeah.
If they hadn't perhaps heard the show.
It's a valid
like,
point.
Oh my God,
I forgot what day it was.
Stu just called him his co-host Slut Cancer. That's really not fucking cool.
Well, neither am I.
Anyway. Yeah, that's fair.
Scientifically proven. So you are here because you do some pretty interesting things. You have been porting 8-bit NES games to the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. And I guess the first question I have is, why?
You know, that's a question that I get on Twitter quite a bit from people who are like, this is a waste of time. Why would you do that? But there's a lot of, I think, really good reasons. The first of which is that it's just kind of fun. It's like an interesting challenge, really, to try to solve. But if you go back and play some of those NES games, I don't know if you remember this, but there's some problems in some of them. There's some slowdown, there's some lag, there's sprite flicker, like all of these things. And porting them to the Super Nintendo allows you to eliminate a lot of that. And I think one of the games that I did is Super Dodgeball. And if you go back and play Super Dodgeball on the NES,
it's very flickery, yeah.
It's flickery and it's slow and it's a slog. And check out a little self promotion here. Check out the Super Nintendo port of it, and it's like a whole new game. Everything is smooth. I eliminated all the flicker, or most of the flicker. No lag. It just plays like a brand new game.
Oh, that's so. All right. So when you're doing these things, you're just enhancing what's already there, right? We're not talking about things that are like. I think that's where the confusion comes from. At least that's where it came from for me. Because I remember the first time I don't remember if it was one of your projects or one of the other folks that are doing these things, where it was porting the NES game to the Super Nintendo, and then I saw it. It's like, well, that's the NES game. What's the purpose of this? Because we're not talking about Super Mario All-Stars or even, well, thankfully, Super Ninja Gaiden Trilogy. You're basically taking the exact thing that's there and making it work on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm taking the NES game and I'm keeping all of the game logic the same from the NES game. I'm not touching any of that at all. For the most part, I'm keeping all of the graphics the same, although I do convert them to a different format, but I don't change them, mostly because I'm not an artist, and when I try to do it, it looks horrible. But I'm updating all of the interaction that the game has with the hardware so that it works with the Super Nintendo instead of the Nintendo, which allows it to run and take advantage of all of those things that the Super Nintendo provides, like more sprites, less flicker, faster CPU, things like that.
How could I find... I'm trying to look for a video of the Super Nintendo version of Super Dodgeball on YouTube, and... where would I even find it? Because I'm typing Super Dodgeball, Super NES port, and it's just giving me the NES game.
Let me shoot you a link to a video that I made explicitly for this purpose.
Ooh.
Dan, entertain everyone.
It's one of the things that, like, I'm glad you're on. It's been on my mind as I've been going back playing through these Castlevania games, which we talked about earlier. and we'll talk about later, Kris, because that's how time jumps work. But like for those Castlevania collections that Konami did, they did not touch the games whatsoever. So like all the slowdown and flicker and whatever other nonsense is present in the original NES, Super NES, whatever, it's all still there. And the whole time I'm playing through it, I'm like, man, I really love these games, but I wish they would have done just a little bit, like just a little bit.
Right, because like when you look at the
to eliminate that stuff,
the Ninja Turtles collection they was who did that pour? That was Digital Eclipse, I think. Did the Ninja Turtles Cowabunga collection? They cleaned up the slowdown. And the limited runs Rocket Knight collection, they didn't eliminate it entirely, but the Super Nintendo game they cleaned that up a lot. Like the slowdown in the Super Nintendo version of Sparkster is brutal, and it's almost entirely eliminated in this collection, which is great. I love it when they do things like that. Actually, think back to the Mega Man collections. The PS2 ones. Remember, you could play that Navi mode where, like, even the sound effects they wouldn't clip over the sound effects wouldn't clip over each other because there were basically infinite sound channels at that point. So you would have you would go into a room for a Mega Man 2 boss, and you wouldn't have like the part of some of the instruments cut out of the music the boss music when you hear the door close. Like it all just played perfectly, which was super cool.
It is really cool. And it's just one of those things where it's like, I mean, I imagine it's a lot of work because I don't know shit about this, right? Like we talk about it all the time on the show of like, okay, I don't get it. I don't know how to do literally any of that stuff, but just a little bit of work, a little bit would have been amazing.
Yeah, this comparison I'm looking at right here is super awesome because I think this is one of the things that always turned me off to Super Dodgeball as a kid. Like my friends loved this game, and I just couldn't get into it because of how it just seemed like it was falling apart the whole time you were playing it.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing how much difference it makes. And especially, like, I don't know, a game like Super Dodgeball, I have really fond memories of the arcade game and never really getting very far, but really loving it. And so I booted up the Nintendo one, and I was like, this is not what I remember. This is not smooth and fun and fast paced. This is laggy and blinky and stuff. So I think that's the example I usually show people when they ask, like, why bother? The other really cool thing that porting to the Super Nintendo affords is that there's a lot more support for different features on the Super Nintendo, one of which is MSU1 audio. So there's a chip on flash carts like the FX Pack Pro, and a lot of emulators support this, where you can have CD quality audio for Super Nintendo games. As long as you build them right and make the tracks and stuff. And so, that lets you do things like add intro videos to Super Nintendo games and cool soundtracks. So, for instance, my port of Chip 'n Dale's Rescue Rangers, if you boot it up, you get the actual cartoon intro from the cartoon, like at the beginning of the game, which is something you could never do on the Nintendo. And you actually can't do it on an original Super Nintendo without an FX Pack Pro or using an emulator.
Fascinating. So that actually brings you to a question I had. How exactly does this work with the sound, right? Because one of my favorite, the game you're working on right now, Blaster Master, one of my absolute favorite soundtracks for Super Nintendo. For NES. How exactly are you able to maintain the NES sound through a Super Nintendo?
Yeah, it's. I would say it's pretty close. It's close enough for my ears. After listening to the trivia episodes, it's close enough for Dan's ears.
That's
but
right.
It may not be close enough for your ears. So the way that works is that there's another developer called Memblers, who many years ago, actually, like in the mid to late 2000s, actually wrote and built a NES sound chip emulator for the Super Nintendo sound chip. So that allows us to pretty easily approximate the NES sound on the Super Nintendo. And it's not perfect. And there's like, I certainly have had people complain that, hey, this doesn't sound right. And I'm like, it's a bit beyond my capabilities to make the Super Nintendo sound more like the NES. But it does a pretty good job. Like, I think if you heard the music, and maybe once I get the music and Blaster Master working, I'll send you some clips and you can tell me how close it is. You would definitely recognize it. And you might say, oh, that sounds a little bit off, but it's still pretty good and definitely enjoyable.
Blaster Master in particular is a tough one to get right because, like, if you load up, the NES Classic Edition or a lot of NES emulators really struggle to run Blaster Master's sound properly, specifically the drums. Like, they become these really overbearing messes. I think the PlayStation 2 in Japan, one of those platforms had a Sunsoft collection, and Blaster Master sounded just atrocious in there. Do you have, like, I don't know, maybe a video of a game you've done already that I could hear? I'm just so curious.
Let me... Let's see here. I have...
and this is where Evan will cut in sound. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
How about... let's see. All right, how about Rygar? How familiar are you with the Rygar soundtrack?
I'm very familiar with the Rygar soundtrack, yeah.
All right. So, let me send this to you.
Okay.
So Rygar was one of my earlier ports, but I think it'll give you a good idea of generally like the quality of the music and how it approximates on the NES. It might take a while to get to the music part.
The sound effects sound spot on. Wow, that's really weird. Like, it sounds very odd, but I can hear where it's coming from. Like, the main melody definitely sounds more like a Super Nintendo instrument. This is what I want to hear. I wanted to hear the second area. Well, you know, it's certainly not unplayable. It's very different, at least to my ears. But so was that utilizing the NES sound library you were talking to me about before, or how exactly was that happening?
Yeah, that's happening purely on the Super Nintendo using Memler's sound emulator that reconfigures the Super Nintendo sound chip to be able to approximate the Nintendo sound. Wow,
that is utterly fascinating. Now I want to go back and watch this without flicker, because that's another thing. Rygar, watching the enemies show up, like specifically little worms in that first area coming out of the ground, that was always very flickery, and it's kind of wild watching this little bit cleaned up like that. Very interesting. Now I really want to play through these ports. Like, I want to hear what they sound like, because it's definitely different. It's like it's not game ruining for me. You know, it's just like, oh, so I'm just playing a different flavor of this altogether. We had a conversation. I think it was on Twitter, or I can't remember if it was Twitter or it was on the Discord. You were asking people about alterations to Blaster Master in particular. Which I thought was very interesting, because I thought the whole purpose in general was just kind of keep these as close to the original versions as possible, but cleaned up. So how difficult is it to add enhancements like that? Like, and what other kinds of enhancements would you even consider doing?
Yeah, it's, you know, some things are pretty easy to do. Things like changing the value of how much damage you take. The one you're referring to is with Blaster Master. The number one complaint I've heard when I've listened to people talk about it is that whenever you level up your gun, every time you take a hit, you lose health and you lose a gun level, which just feels punishing and brutal. It's real mean.
It is mean.
And And that game is hard. Okay, like I played through it and cheated a lot to be able to test it. So I posted a poll because I was just curious, like what people thought if I should change, if I should remove that entirely, if I should change it, if I should absolutely leave it as is. And actually got a lot of interaction on it. And it was really interesting to see people's thoughts. And so something like that is very easy to change. A lot of people responded with other changes they would like that would be much harder. Somebody said, make a save system, which is obviously a lot more involved.
Yeah, that's a whole other ball of wax.
No, that's super. Just do it.
Yeah, just do it, right?
You just make one.
Just tick the box. Here you go.
Yeah, just add an option for everything.
Yeah.
There's, I'm trying to think of some other examples of things that I've done. I've added, so Double Dragon was a game that I did. And, one thing I usually do is I add something to the game to make it easier for me to test, because sometimes these games are hard, even if I've played them a lot. And I don't want to have to play for 20 minutes to do things to test something. In Double Dragon, I added the Konami code. So if you pause the game and put in the Konami code, it refills your health, gives you all the moves, and sets you to 9 lives.
Oh, sweet.
Nice. That's awesome.
Right?
On Rygar. Best way to play it.
If you put in the Konami code at the first intro screen of Rygar, it'll start you with all the items and full power-ups and everything. So
I still don't think I'd be able to beat it. It's fucking hard.
I hear you're the pro gamer here. You're the
apparently.
Yeah.
Dan sat and watched me beat Rygar top to bottom one day, and it was a wonderful night. Rygar's not that bad. That's not that bad. Not that bad.
I don't know. It's all the flicker. That's the problem.
It's easier than Castlevania.
Oh my god, it really is.
Castlevania is so easy. That game is not hard. The first Castlevania?
You're talking gibberish.
That's easier than Rygar, for sure.
That game is super easy.
Barely
beat that when we were 6. Yeah. Dracula, and then you can jump over the shit.
You can get into some really, really involved changes. So Kid Icarus is the game that I've done by far the most modifications of. I was going to
ask about Kid Icarus because I have some questions.
Yeah, well, I won't get too far into it then, and I'll let you ask some questions. But Kid Icarus was my first ROM hacking experience. Even before I was porting games, myself and a friend who goes by the name of Fruit Bat Salad built the Kid Icarus randomizer. And we built that on a website that you would upload the ROM to, and it would randomize it and spit out a new ROM for you to play that was randomized. And then I ported all of that logic into the game, so it's all contained inside the game. And when I ported it, my actual first motivation for doing these ports was that I wanted more power to be able to do more things with the randomizer, to have more space to be able to do more things. And so I was like, man, if I could port this to the Super Nintendo. I saw that Infidelity had done a port of Mega Man 2 and Mega Man 4, and I was like, okay, this is possible. Like, I got to look into this and see how to do this. And so that was the original motivation, port Kid Icarus to the Super Nintendo so that I could really build up the randomizer and flesh that out even more.
So what did you do with Kid Icarus?
Hold on.
No, go ahead.
Pause. You wait a second. That sounded very demanding. I'm sorry. I apologize. For what it's worth, I do not think you should change the Blaster Master thing.
Okay.
You should still lose. Like, it's punishing and it's bullshit and it sucks, but that's the game.
Yeah.
Like, without that, I don't even know. Like, it's just not even the same experience.
Well, I liked the idea. One of the ideas that he had posted on Twitter was the idea of, instead of losing one gun for every hit, you want to lose one gun for every 2 hits or something. So you still lose gun from getting hit, you just don't lose it quite as quickly. And I thought that was a nice compromise. That, and if it was possible to just make it an option that you could tick, weapon degradation, yes or no. Because I don't think losing weapon degradation entirely is insanity. That just kind of breaks the game, because once you get that crazy full-powered gun, you're kind of a murder
that's
machine.
The end of it. Yeah,
unless you get hit, then you lose it. So, but having the murder machine gun and then being able to take maybe 1 or 2 hits, 2 hits instead of just one, that feels a little bit less, I don't know, ulcer inducing.
A little less 1980s video game design.
Yeah, let me throw a couple other options at you that I've thought of since then. So one thing that I thought of is that there's about 8 power-ups in the game, and I wonder if just tying gun strength more to the power-up system, maybe like a floor, right? So like if you've beaten 4 of the levels, you've got 4 of the items, then your gun level won't drop below 3 or something. Like you can get it and it won't drop below 3.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I like that. That's cool.
The other thing to point out, and I pointed this out on Twitter as well, is that I will pretty much always provide like a vanilla ROM, a one that is like, this is no modifications, no editorialization of the game by me. This is just the straight port, because it's very easy for me to just build a flag in on when I build the game and say include these modifications or don't. And that way, if somebody wants just the NES experience but on their Super Nintendo, like, they have that option. And then if somebody wants all the bells and whistles and the things, another thing that I'm thinking about after playing through and testing it is, like, should there be a life limit? Like, do we really need to only have 3 lives in Blaster Master? Like, maybe we get rid of that. I don't know.
Now, what about...
That's fair.
Yeah, lives are ridiculous. Oh, crap. Where is it? I had a great question, and then it floated away. Oh, damn it. We were talking about... What did you say? What were we talking about right before the lives in Blaster Master?
Kid Icarus. Oh, no, sorry. And right before that?
Yeah, right before
tying
lives.
The gun levels to...
Tying the gun levels to level ups. Ah, damn it, it's gone. That was a good question, too.
You'll think of it. It'll be fine.
If
not, I'm in the Discord. You can ask me later.
Yeah.
There you go.
Something about farts. That's going to drive me crazy.
I don't think there's any farts in the game.
There
There's frogs.
should be. There should be.
You should add can we add those? That's a thing.
I could maybe make
buttons.
It smell. Oh, buttons. Yeah.
So the Super Nintendo controller has more buttons.
It does.
How easy is it for you to map things like jumping in and out of your tank to a more easy button to press than the select button, or having special weapons be a single button press instead of up and shoot or something?
Yeah, pretty easy for the most part. I did that for Double Dragon. So in Double Dragon, there's a punch and a kick button, and if you push both of them, you jump.
Yeah.
And so on the Super Nintendo port, you can now press A to jump, and then punch and kick are X and B. So that's an example of something I did. It would be pretty easy to say, hey, make X shoot the homing missile. What it would do is essentially make those buttons act as if you had pushed the combination of the other buttons.
So it wouldn't disable the combination? Like, you could still press up and B? Okay.
Yep, it wouldn't disable the combination. It would just basically act like almost like a macro key, where it would say, oh, you pressed X. I'm going to pretend you pressed down and fire, and that is tied to the thing. It's certainly possible to completely redo the controls. It's just much more involved.
Gotcha. Because I know in some of those older games, it was somewhat problematic, and I can't think of an exact instance, but it would be somewhat problematic to accidentally do that button press when you're actually trying to climb down, climb down a ladder and press a button instead of firing off a special weapon or something like that. Or in Kid Icarus in particular, I keep thinking of being on a platform and then pressing down and falling through it. And it's like, that's not at all what I wanted to do. I was trying to move right, and I accidentally hit down, and now I'm dead.
Well, you die a lot in Kid Icarus. It's fun.
Yes, you do, especially in the beginning. So back to Kid Icarus in general. I'm currently playing through for the, bajillionth time, the 3D Classics version of Kid Icarus. Yeah, have you played through that version?
I have. Yeah, I've got it. Funny story. I rented Kid Icarus when I was young and probably never got past 1-4 ever. I'm pretty sure I never got past anything very far in the game at all. But I never knew growing up that there were strength upgrades and health upgrades. Like I was never good enough to get them. So I thought that was the game. There's no manual when you rented it. You had one of those stickers on the inside of the plastic case that told you nothing. Right. And so when it came up for the 3D Classics, I picked it up because I have this huge nostalgia for it. And then I was like, I'm going to look up an FAQ on this because the internet exists now and I can do that. And I read it and I'm like, wait a minute, levels? Health upgrades? What are you talking about?
Just stand there and kill everything for the first couple of levels.
Yeah, and the game is so much better when you realize that.
It really is.
But yeah, I'm familiar with it. I bet I think what you're going to ask. Here's what I'm guessing your question is. Adding those backgrounds.
That was
to
one
the
of my
Super
questions.
Nintendo port. It's something that is on my list. I think it would actually be fairly straightforward to do. It would be really cool. I would really like to at least try and figure out how to do that. The hardest part for me right now is extracting those backgrounds so that I can, get them in. Or I have to pull them out of the 3DS game somehow, and that's something I'm not super familiar with how to do.
But that does seem like it would be technically possible.
Yeah, so if you think about the Super Nintendo, the graphics on the Super Nintendo are split up into several background layers, right? So there's background 1, and then behind it is background 2, and behind that is background 3, and background 4, and they can be reordered in certain ways. On the Nintendo, it's just one, right? You just have one screen that scrolls around and does stuff. So on my ports, for the most part, I'm just using background 1. And so it would be pretty easy for me to add some logic to say, hey, I'm background 2, draw this thing and put it behind background 1. And as long as I could, properly import the tiles and put them back there and draw it, I think theoretically it would be pretty doable. That
would be wild to open up. That could actually open up some really interesting things for ROM hacks of games, because as much as I adore 3D Classics Kid Icarus, after I played that, I was like, all right, when are you doing Metroid? Because I would love that for Metroid. If you would just take, then that might even theoretically be easier. You would just literally take the backgrounds from Zero Mission and apply them to the flat black backgrounds in, because I imagine extracting from a Game Boy Advance game is easier than abstracting from an NES game, although I guess they are a bit more detailed, right? Because the 3D Classics ones, the Kid Icarus ones, I guess the reason they work as well as they do is that they're not so overly detailed that they clash with what's in the foreground, right? They're super pixelated like an NES image. So I don't know, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself there, but that could be interesting to see for a lot of those older games that just have really simple flat backgrounds to add some sort of wacky background effects to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And, speaking of Metroid, I didn't do it, but if you haven't checked out Infidelity's Metroid Super Nintendo port of the NES Metroid, a lot of the work, I'm going to just give him a shout out right now. Everything that I've been able to do on NES porting, I would not have been possible without Infidelity's help. He's been, I've really kind of just stood on his shoulders, to get a lot of this done. He's been super helpful, and he's really paved the way to be able to do these things. And he did Metroid, but he added a lot of enhancements to Metroid. It's clearly a love letter to the NES Metroid, a map and the ability to toggle items on and off, and all kinds of soundtracks. You can play with the original soundtrack, the Famicom Disk System soundtrack, the Zero Mission soundtrack, or the orchestral version soundtrack. Really cool work, and really big fan of everything he does.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a version of the Super NES port. Okay. See, now this is really interesting. I'm listening to the NES port, the Super NES port from Infidelity, from somebody who posted on YouTube 9 months ago. And this sounds 100% spot on to the NES game.
He knows, he's done some different things with sound. He knows it a little bit better than I do. His sound is definitely better than the ports that I do, just that little bit. And I think he puts in a lot of extra effort doing specific samples of different sound to make sure that they kind of align right. It's also possible, although I don't know with Metroid, I think it's using Membler's emulator still. But I know on some games, Infidelity always does MSU1 versions of his games, except for Punch-Out, which I don't think he bothered doing anything with MSU1. But it's possible that it's an MSU1 soundtrack, but I think he just really tweaks the audio to the nth degree to make sure like he gets it perfect.
Huh. Fascinating. All right, so sorry, back to Kid Icarus. So obviously the backgrounds would be super awesome, but what about adding like the ability to float down like they did in 3D Classics?
The ability to float down.
In the 3D Classics Kid Icarus, if you play there's like you can choose between the original controls and enhanced controls. The enhanced controls, if you hold down the jump button, he slowly floats down. Kind of like in Of Myths and Monsters, which makes the beginning of the game in particular so much more manageable because there's like single area, single block platforms become a lot easier to land on when you have the ability to slowly float down.
I guess I never used that. I didn't even know about that.
It doesn't say it anywhere. Like it's one of those things I remember reading about
hidden.
Before the game came out, and it doesn't say it anywhere in the game, but it gives you the ability to do that. So I guess since you didn't know that existed,
that definitely be something that's within the realm of possibility of doing. Like it doesn't sound too bad. I know a couple people that were beta testing Kid Icarus when I was doing it added a bunch of quick hacks that they just thought were fun, like endless feather. And the ability to go through walls, so they could just fly straight up through all of the levels, which they found quite amusing.
So, like in Myths, what I found interesting about that in particular is that they didn't add any sort of animation. In Kid Icarus of Myths and Monsters, you always have the ability to tap A, similar to the raccoon tail in Mario 3, to float down slower. So when they added that into the 3D Classics Kid Icarus, he still just, his wing stays perfectly still. If you were to theoretically do something like that, how difficult would it be to add a frame of animation for a new ability like that? Just a second frame for his wing. Like, how hard is it to add something like that?
Well, it's definitely harder than just adding the behavior. But for something like that, it feels like it would be... I don't know. That's something that I would think about. Do I really want that? Do I really want to spend that time on that feature, or do I want to do something? Or do I want to do something else?
But simply adding the behavior would be super awesome. I don't know how updatable these things are once you're done with them. I assume you can do whatever the hell you want. But that's one of my favorite ways to play the 3D Classics Kid Icarus. I think the game just feels much better that way. It's one of the things I like better about the sequel. On Game Boy is the ability to have that just kind of makes a very, very hard game feel more manageable in a fair way instead of a game-breaking kind of a way.
Yeah, well, all my ports are open source, so I mean, you could go do it if you want to learn 65-816 assembly and how Super Nintendo works, and start digging around in Kid Icarus source code. Like you know, go from the
there you go, Chris. With all your free time, throw that in there.
Now, again, I haven't tried your Kid Icarus port. I haven't tried any of these ports yet because it didn't dawn on me until, I don't know, a couple of days ago that I could play these on flashcards. I just naturally assumed I had to play it on a PC, which I have a Mac. So I just kind of naturally assumed these are off limits to me. I guess I'll just watch YouTube videos. And then, like, I don't know, when I started talking to you about coming on the show, it's like, I bet these work on flashcards. I bet I could put this on my flashcard and put it on my FX Pack Pro and play them that way.
Absolutely.
What a jackass I am. So here's another question about Kid Icarus. You mentioned the level up system, and I know I'm asking all these Kid Icarus questions because I'm a goon for that game.
I love it. It's one of my favorite NES games. It always surprises me. Like I talk about it like it's everybody's favorite, like in their favorite top 10, and like people do not have a fondness for it, and I don't understand why not.
It is
because it's impossible.
I don't know.
It's easier than
so
Castlevania.
Hard. It's easier than I'm with
come
you.
on.
It's easier than
Stop
Castlevania.
It. How dare you?
It's
Is
easier than
Castlevania really that hard?
You just know it that well. You played it.
I know,
it's not
but
that hard once you know it. Like once you know the game, then you're good to go. But
I don't know. Like
if you
I never
don't have it memorized,
the first Castlevania was that hard.
Yeah,
like even when I was
younger.
younger, I always found like Kid Icarus much more difficult. Like Ninja Gaiden, I think is much more difficult.
I think if you generally ask people on Earth if the original Castlevania is hard,
I try not
they're
to.
going to say yes. It's very hard. It's one of those games that people think of as a hard Nintendo game. So
Kid Icarus is only hard if you don't get the strength upgrade in 1-2. Then it becomes
That's
impossible.
fair.
Yeah, and
That's
it also gets easier as you go. Like
the
first 4 stages of that game even the first 3 are the hardest in the entire game, bar none.
I have a theory after digging through the source code of Kid Icarus that they intended or originally had a chalice that heals you halfway through 1-3, and they removed it for some reason.
And I think assholes.
Because I think that would actually make the game so much more approachable. Like that 1-3 is a huge barrier, and I think they removed a chalice there that would have made it way more approachable.
Can you put it back?
I absolutely. That's a 2-second change.
Please do.
Actually, in the randomizer, we randomize the items that are like throughout the level. We also remove the score requirement for the strength upgrades. So, like, if you find a door with the strength upgrade, you just get it.
Oh,
because that's also
cool.
dumb.
That's really cool. I like that a lot. What I was going to ask is about the level up system. Because I've never really understood it. I just sit and kill things. I just grind for ages so that when I beat the end of the level, I get a level up and I get some extra health. Is there a way to visualize that, to like show what's the point threshold, and to kind of show your score in some sort of visual way? Is there a way to let players see that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, the health upgrades are just at 20,000, 50,000, 100,000, and 200,000 total points. And so, like, you could absolutely show that you're going to get one. We could also show the hidden score or the skill score, some people call it, that determines whether or not you're going to get a strength upgrade, or if you're going to have Zeus just ghost you and not show up.
Yeah, you just go over like, well, what the hell was that?
Yeah. You know what's interesting, actually, a little trivia on Kid Icarus. That first room in Kid Icarus, that empty room, it has nothing in it. It's actually a strength upgrade room.
Son of a bitch.
But there's no way to get enough points to have the strength upgrade there. Like it doesn't, like, there's absolutely, even you couldn't sit there and kill snakes long enough because only 16 snakes will spawn, so you can't get it. So my theory is that it actually started more like Zelda, where you started without arrows and you were going to go into that room and get your arrow and start. But that's obviously, I have no idea. I just know that that's a strength upgrade room and there's zero purpose for it.
So with what you had just said before, where you would, every time you find one of those rooms, you get a strength upgrade, is now you get one right at the beginning of the game?
Well, in the randomizer, that door might not be there, right? So in the randomizer, all of the screens are completely randomized, the order that you get them, and every screen can have a door, and like, who knows what you're going to find. So we distribute the strength upgrades throughout all the levels, so there will always be 4 strength upgrades in the game, but there might not be one in 1-1, or there might be one in 1-1 but not 1-2, and there might be one in 1-1, and there might be one in 2-3, and then there might be 2 more in World 3. Like, you don't really know. Like, there's just stuff available. We also lowered the price of all the goods in the shops because the prices are ridiculous. Like, nobody can buy anything in Kid Icarus.
What do you say? Try buying from me.
Yeah, right.
So that's just for your randomizer. You didn't do that to your regular port,
right? Yeah, the vanilla port is completely unchanged. I didn't make any updates to the vanilla Kid Icarus game, but you can choose to play the randomized version instead, and then it has all kinds of different changes. for instance, in the dungeons, just in the randomizer, we give you the map, pencil, and torch by default, because those are really nice to have in a randomizer, so you can see kind of the layout of the dungeon and where you're at.
Right, yeah.
And buying them every dungeon and finding the map is, in a randomizer, is ridiculous, so we just give them to everybody.
Quite. So, is there any? Do you have any thoughts of? Like you said before about trying to add the 3DS backgrounds. Do you have any other thoughts of further enhancing the Kid Icarus one? Obviously, I don't have the mental bandwidth to do. I can barely get through my day as it is. Like, is this something you're going to continue to tinker with? And will you go back and play the 3DS one and try it out with the floaty effect, which is really cool?
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out. Yeah, I'm definitely. I go back to Kid Icarus and add and update some things here and there every once in a while, and so I definitely have things that I want to do. I would love to incorporate the save system from the Famicom Disk System game into the version, so that you could save your game if you wanted. That's definitely something that's doable. I would leave the password system there still if you wanted to use it, but. I don't know how many Kid Icarus passwords you botched as a kid writing down, but I definitely lost my, my progress all the way to 1.3 several times.
Yeah, yeah. I'll just say yes.
Yeah.
The answer is yes. So generally speaking, and not to continue to harp on Kid Icarus, it's just such a, I'm just trying to get a grasp on what's possible and what isn't.
Yeah.
And Kid Icarus is a great example because I know it so well. In the sequel, in Of Myths and Monsters on Game Boy, one of the things that sets that game a lot easier is the fact that occasionally monsters will drop health pickups, little tiny chalices instead of like the full size ones. Is something like that a difficult thing to add to a game like Kid Icarus to augment drops or even add them in games that don't have them from enemies?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not sure. The items are very kind of specifically coded, but they drop hearts, and different items are dropped in other places. So I think it would definitely be possible, to add drop tables so that it's something like 90% of the time or 95% of the time they drop the heart, and 5% of the time it drops a chalice or something. That's a cool idea.
I came up with a cool idea.
And it's totally fine to focus on Kid Icarus. The second half of this interview is all Puzzle and Dragons, so it's fine.
Yes, thankfully. Good God.
All Pat all the time. So you had mentioned before the things about augmenting other games. Has anyone done the original NES Ninja Gaiden yet? And if they did they get rid of the thing where if you die at the final boss, you go back 6 stages?
Nobody that I'm aware of has done Ninja Gaiden, although it would certainly be easy to change that. But the thing is, if you don't change it, then you can get back with Spin Dash again and one-shot the second phase of the boss really easily. So, I mean, Ninja Gaiden's easier than Castlevania, right?
Oh my God, it so is not. That game's so much harder than Castlevania.
I can beat Ninja Gaiden easier than Castlevania. I know that much, but I've played a lot more Ninja Gaiden than Castlevania, so that's why.
That's a good question. I would probably say, for me personally, Ninja Gaiden's harder because I think the stages themselves are harder. I think back to there's nothing that quite matches the insanity of fluorescent orange jetpacked ninjas randomly dropping stars on your head in Castlevania. Ninja Gaiden's a bit more fast-paced. I think there's more cheap deaths in that one. I would say I think Ninja Gaiden's harder, but not by a whole ton, because, I don't know, man, that last fight, Dracula's a bitch. Dracula's just a bastard.
Ooh. You know what I could do with Ninja Gaiden is I could import the ice level from the Sega Master System version.
Yes, please do.
Oh my God, could you
it's
actually
such a
do
fair
that? I have no idea. It's such a bullshit level.
Yeah, I hate that.
Is there, so You've mentioned Infidelity a couple times as somebody else who does this. Like, is there like a group of you guys that are out here doing? Because I had like, and who the fuck am I, right? But I had never heard of this until you posted something in our Discord, and it was like, oh shit! And like Kris said at the start of the interview, it was like, all right, why? That seems like a weird thing. Oh, like okay, that makes sense. But then still, like, as Kris is talking here, as we're going through, like, it's hard to find stuff on YouTube of like, hey, here's this convert. So, like, is there a big community of it, or is it you and Infidelity?
It's so. I don't want to say I know everybody that's doing it. The people that I know of that have done this or something like this, Infidelity has done a few ports. I've done a few ports, and then I know there's a developer called Total. Total is a goddamn wizard. He is the author of the both the Super Metroid / Legend of Zelda randomizer, where it combines both games,
right?
As well as the
that thing
fairly
is
new. Well, have you seen the quad randomizer, which is Zelda 1, Metroid, Zelda 3, and Super Metroid, all in one game? And so he obviously had to port Zelda and Metroid to Super Nintendo in order to accomplish this. And then he, shoved them all into one game because he's Total and he's got insane. A wand or something. So I know he's done it. I also know there is a project called Project Nested. Project Nested is a attempt to make essentially I don't want to call it an emulator. I don't know a ton about it, but basically you boot up Project Nested on your computer, you put in a NES ROM, and it creates a Super Nintendo ROM of it. And for some games, it works very well. But for a lot of games, it's not performant enough. Like doing it natively, like Infidelity and I do it. It's actually like just running natively on the Super Nintendo. And Project Nested games can, some of them will work great, and it's like a really cool project for the things that it works well for. Some of them it doesn't work quite as well, and that approach doesn't work. So those are the projects and people that I'm aware of that are doing things. Is there a little community of it? Infidelity has a Discord, and I'm in that Discord, and I'm guessing that's where at least 90% of the NES to Super Nintendo conversion discussions happening, because it's the two of us are kind of the ones that I'm aware of that are doing it. If anybody else is doing it, reach out to me. I'd love to chat.
Well, because it seems so. Like the games that have been that either you've done or Infidelity has done, like it seems like one of those things like, that's kind of weird that nobody's done Ninja Gaiden yet. It's kind of weird that anybody's done any of this. Like that part of it is kind of odd. It's like, oh, people are actually doing this, but then why haven't they done the game that I want? Like what led you to start with Chippendales Rescue Rangers? Not that I'm hating on it. I just of all the NES games that have been published, that seems like an interesting choice. Unless you had a thing for Gadget, and then I get it.
I mean, who didn't when they were younger, right?
It's fine. She's
Chippendales Rescue Rangers was a
or that was Tailspin, wasn't it? Fuck, I'm sorry.
I mean, the Capcom Disney games, right? Like DuckTales, Chippendales, Darkwing Duck. They're just games that I really liked growing up. They've been, I don't know. I think they're really fun. They're short. I've speed ran Chippendales Rescue Rangers, so like I've played it a lot. I enjoyed it. And when I was talking with some people about like, hey, what games would you like to see? Like, what would they want to do? Like, and they threw some out there, and Chippendales was one of the ones they talked about. And I was like, I really like that game. I really remember the game. Let me see how hard that would be. When I decide I want to do a game, there are a couple of requirements that I need to be able to do it. Because Nintendo games, as they evolved, as they came out, they had different memory mapping chips on the game, right? So you might have heard of like the MMC1 chip, the MMC3 chip, the MMC5 chip, and there's a bunch of other ones. For me, doing anything past the MMC1 chip is not really feasible. It gets much more complicated the further in the NES lifespan you go, the more complicated memory mapping chips. Infidelity has done a couple of MMC3 games, and just watching him do it has completely I won't say never, but it's a lot harder. It's a lot more work. MMC1,
sure.
Pretty straightforward, right? So I take the list of MMC1 games. I look at what it is. I look at which ones I really like. I look at what games music I want to be hearing for the next 2 months, because I'm gonna be focused on that game for probably a couple months as I do the porting, and you hear the music a lot, and it gets stuck in your head. And then it's got to be a game that I'm interested in, and want to do, and that's possible, and then. Kind of go from there and decide. And Chippendales, what do you got against Chippendales? What game do you want me to do?
Bubble Bath Babes, obviously.
That
right, obviously. That's funny that you say that. Actually, Bubble Bobble would be really good. Bubble Bath Babes?
Oh,
because Bubble Bobble has a pretty severe flicker issue. With all the more bubbles that are on the screen, it's hard to see. They're all going in and out. That would be a really cool one to see happen.
Yeah, I mean, I would say
you want a song to get stuck in your head for several days.
God. It's already there now. It's there. I can't. You've done it.
Having just played through, I just finished 2 today. 2 could use some help. Just, there's a lot of help the 2, but there's so much slowdown in so much of Castlevania that I would imagine playing through it without that would be such a wonderful experience.
I think Castlevania is definitely going to get done sometime. If it's not me, I could definitely see Infidelity doing it. Castlevania is a game that I would be surprised if it's not on his list, and it's definitely on my list somewhere that I would get to it and do it. I like Castlevania. I actually really like Castlevania 2. So I would probably do Castlevania 2 before I did the first one.
Ninja Gaiden 3 is another solid pick, just to put the Japanese version in English, just to apply the difficulty changes between the North American and Japanese version.
Well, Ninja Gaiden 2 and 3, because I've already looked at this, are MMC3 games, so I will not be doing them.
Oh.
But maybe if Infidelity is a Ninja Gaiden fan. The first one is an MMC1 game, so that one's possible. Although making that change that you suggest of just changing the difficulty or whatever to match the Japanese version, that could be done as an NES ROM hack pretty easily.
Gotcha. Yeah. The only complaint I would have on the original Ninja Gaiden would be fixing the sending you back 6 worlds. I mean,
would you be okay fixing that as well as fixing the spin bug so that it doesn't insta kill bosses?
Oh yeah, that would be great too. I think that would be awesome because the spin bug it does kind of take away from things. I understand it's super fun for speedrunning, and it is a challenge in and of itself to make sure you get there without using special weapons and you have enough ninpo or whatever. But I do think it would, if you were going to fix that, I think fixing that in both directions, making the continue thing not so brutal, but also not being able to insta-kill the demons by just shredding them. I think that would be a great change.
I think if you fix the spin dash, if you fix the spin bug, I think Ninja Gaiden might be harder than Castlevania.
Yeah, the bosses aren't that. All right, the last boss, is super tough. But Dracula is super tough. I know, Dan, you say it's super easy to make that jump and hit him in the head. I struggle with that all the time. Struggling to that first form of Dracula, I struggle to hell with that.
Really?
Yeah, I have such a hard time making that jump consistently. I always wind up getting to the monster form with 3 pieces of health left or something. But yeah, I'm thinking through the bosses in the original Ninja Gaiden, and up until you get to, what the fuck is his name? I have no idea how to pronounce it. Is it Jakayo, Fred?
Steven.
Steven. I'm going to call him
Dad.
Steven.
It's pronounced
Steven. Isn't he Dad?
Sure. I would say, with the exception of him, I don't think the bosses are like so terribly difficult to blast through. Oh, speaking of that, what about Blaster Master? You're keeping that pause trick for the bosses?
Ooh. Oh, controversy. Well, I mean, it's in the original, right? So the vanilla version will definitely still have it. I will probably not fix it.
I've always wondered if it's a glitch, or because it's really weird when you look at that game, and this is the way I spent my time as a kid. I always kind of wondered why that works and why it doesn't work on other bosses. And it's because, like, when you pause the game, the bosses it doesn't work on, whatever that hitbox is, disappears. So it can't hit it. But when you on those, with the even number stages or whatever the stages that bomb trick works on, the grenade trick works on, that thing doesn't disappear. So it does the damage. And I often wonder if that was an intentional trick, or it's like the Minus World, and it's just like, wow, somebody done fucked up.
It feels like a mistake to me. Like, most games, if you pause, will halt doing updates to like damage and health and animations and things, right? I think Blaster Master, because when you pause elsewhere, you get the pause screen, right, with your inventory and what's going on.
Right, but on the bosses, you pause right there, and that trick works on you too. Because I don't know if you know that, but if you're taking damage and you pause the game, your health is going to drain.
Yeah, so all of those bosses in Blaster Master are not sprites, right? Like, and that's why the pause screen no longer shows you the pause screen, because those bosses are actually backgrounds that are moving around, and that's why the background disappears and it's all black, and then they're huge and amazing, and sprites that there's no way Nintendo could do sprites that big, right? And so they get rid of the pause screen like that you normally get, and they move the thing around. There's probably just somebody forgot to say, hey, if we pause, we should, stop calculating damage and animations and things. It's weird that it only works on the certain levels. I haven't dug into the code to figure out why the bug happens. I will probably just leave it in, because it's going to be a lot more work to get rid of it. And I don't know that it makes the game better to get rid of it. If you don't want to use it, don't use it, right?
Right.
Yeah, you don't have to do it.
Well, like I said, I can't picture it in my head, but I remember being a kid farting around with that and trying to figure out why it does work and doesn't work. And I think it's like I think you can even actually see it on the crab boss when you pause it. Whatever piece of him takes the damage, when you pause it, it actually just disappears. So it seemed like thought was put into it, like, oh, we should solve this problem, but then they didn't apply it to everything correctly or something. It's very strange.
The intern that did the odd levels didn't pay attention that day, and didn't go in and fix it.
Well, speaking of repairing glitches, go ahead, Dan.
Well, no, I was going to say, like, so you said like a lot more work to do this. You mentioned whatever language Kris has to learn to put the Kid Icarus thing in. Like, was this... So, like, how do you figure out that you know how to do this? Is this something that you just went, like, oh, shit, I wonder if I could, or because I have, X list of skills, I know I can do this?
So it certainly helps that I'm, a software engineer by trade.
Right.
I have a master's degree in computer science. I've been a software developer in some form since I was in junior high, writing, programs and dumb games and stuff in C. So, that background certainly helps. The tools that are around today for ROM hacking and stepping through like NES code are really amazing and make it. And that's really how I learned. I learned ROM hacking Kid Icarus by running Kid Icarus in an emulator And you can actually open, in most emulators, the one I use is called Messen, MESEN.
Yeah.
So if you're running a game in Messen, you can open a debugger and it will take the machine code that is on the ROM and essentially decompile it so you can see the assembly language, which is going to probably look like gobbledygook to anybody that doesn't know assembly. But if you start there and start learning and start trying to figure out like, oh, this bit of memory is where Kid Icarus keeps track of what piece of level to load next, like what screen next. What if I change that? Okay, and I can find in the code where that's changed and what does that and like how that goes together. And that's really how I learned like NES programming, is just by kind of fiddling with Kid Icarus and getting the randomizer to work. And like once we had the like some parts of the randomizer working, it was like, oh, well, it'd be cool if we randomized something else in the game. Like we did all the levels, but what about enemies? What about doors? How does it load doors? Let's dig in and figure out how the doors load and how it decides that and how that's stored. And we just kind of reverse engineer it and piece it together and read through the code and figure it out and, go from there. So, my background certainly helps, but I picked up a lot of the skills just by, trying to see if I could do it and learning from there.
Just trying to break it and put it back together.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, fair.
It's and it's always really cool when like you finally get that thing to work, because let me be clear, when stuff doesn't work, and it happens often where it doesn't work, it is a spectacular mess of stuff just crashing and going haywire, because the machines, the NES and Super Nintendo are very dumb machines, and they will execute whatever you tell them to do, even if it makes no sense. It'll be like, oh, that's what you want to do, that's what I'm going to do, right? And that's how you get things like the arbitrary code execution in Super Mario World or whatever, right? Like you can get it to execute whatever you put in there, and it'll break and do crazy things, and all kinds of fun stuff happens.
That's awesome, because like my knowledge of this stuff is like, I know how to use Squarespace to update the rescue website, but like that's all just a template. I don't know, like once, every now and again I'll be doing something online and I'll hit like whatever it is, F11 or whatever, because I'll go to hit backspace and I'll hit that instead, and it'll bring up all that shit on the bottom of the web browser, and I panic. I have like, there's a wave of fear comes over me. So I'm like, I don't know what the fuck any of that is. Get it away, get it away, get it away.
It's too late. Your bank account's empty.
Right? That's what and fuck, they can have the $8 that's in there. I mean, God bless you. Go nuts. Don't spend it all in one place or on one face. But like, yeah, that stuff intimidates me on a level that I don't know that I could ever get past it, because it's just not how my brain works.
It's not something that you're going to be able to pick up and do anything major with in like a couple hours and be like, oh, now I know how to do this thing. Like it is right. A skill that you need to, I think, and I know very little, like as a whole. Like I'm doing some things that I'm very proud of and I think are really great, but there is so much more out there, and like I've kind of carved and learned the things that I need to know to do what I want to do. Right. But there are people, like I mentioned Total, who have a insane comprehensive understanding of both how the NES works and the Super Nintendo works and how to put all this stuff together. It definitely takes a lot of work and patience and practice and perseverance to really, kind of do these things, which is, part of what makes it fun for me is solving those problems.
Well, Kris, I don't think the feather is in your future.
Right.
I don't think you have the time to learn it. Sorry,
no,
bud.
I really don't. Speaking of fixing stuff, we already talked a little bit about audio, but there are a couple of NES games that have infamous audio glitches that just kind of things get a little weird. In particular, I know there was a fix for this at some point. I don't really know where it went or how to do it because it was years and years ago. But the music in Star Tropics, the regular town music, has a bug in it where the music doesn't play properly. There's also a whole extra bass or drum track from the ending that the same, like, one little piece of code was put in wrong, and it stops the music from playing properly. The one that has always bothered me the most is Cobra Triangle has a handful of songs that loop improperly, where, like, once you loop around, it starts jumbling up the notes in the wrong rhythm. How different is it to fix, like, say, a musical glitch as opposed to a visual glitch?
For me, a lot, because I don't know the NES sound chip nearly as well as I know the other parts of it. But I think on things like that, where there's been a lot of investigation and people have kind of probably come out with ROM hacks for the NES game already that fix that stuff. What I would do is I would look at basing my port off of a patched ROM that already had it fixed, which would then hopefully keep that fix in the NES version. So if there were things like that where it had been fixed in a patch, then I could try to incorporate that in my port.
Right. There's a whole YouTube video from the guy who fixed the Star Tropic stuff that I found just utterly fascinating, because I had always, I knew the song really well because I'd listened to video game music like a goon. And there's this part in the song where the right around where it loops, there's this weird bum note that plays, and then a whole chunk of the song just kind of disappears, and then it comes back in at a certain point in the song where it's trying to fix itself, but now this backup rhythm is completely out of sync with the rest of the song. And he went through, and it's just like, you look at the code, and here's this one piece that's just somebody put a 1 instead of a 0 or something. Like, it's one simple fix, then it fixes the whole song, and it sounds the way it was intended to sound. I've never seen anybody come up with a fix for Cobra Triangle, though, which I find fascinating, because I really want to. I'm dying to get David Wise on this show sometime. I've yet to get the intestinal fortitude to ask him to come on the show, but I would love to pick his brain about it.
Now that you've had me, I'm sure he'll see that you've legitimized the podcast and be
as soon
right
as
up.
this comes out, he's going to be calling us.
Like, oh shit, Rumbleminze was on. I better get on there. Got to talk to these guys. All right,
I'll fucking ask him, Kris. What are you worried about?
That's the thing. I want to do it.
He's just a person.
Ollie offered, because Ollie knows the dude, and like, he talked to him on his podcast, and he was just like, "I'll talk to him for you." I was like, "No, I'm gonna do it. I
got to do it because I'm a big boy.
I'm gonna put my big boy pants on, and I'm gonna ask him. I'm gonna talk to him."
He's just a person, Kris.
No, he is a god, a beautiful bald British god.
Sure. We talking about Jason Statham? Love that guy.
Always.
Is he British?
I've never seen him and David Wise in the same room. I'm just saying.
That's right. He's like the Olsen twin.
Exactly.
Sorry.
David Wise is the transporter.
That's right. 100%. 100%. Hundo P.
As the kids say. So going
they
back to...
I heard him.
You had mentioned... you jokingly mentioned the ice level in Ninja Gaiden. One of my big questions would be, is it there's something specific about NES that makes it really compatible with upgrading to Super NES, or how difficult would other platforms be to do these similar kinds of things with?
Yeah, it's there's a couple of hardware details that make it easier and possible, and I'm sure, like, there are people porting games to all kinds of different platforms, but a lot of those are much higher effort than this. So an NES game, like, on the cart, can kind of be broken down into a few parts, right? Like, there's tiles, the actual graphics that are shown. Those are similar, but very easy to translate to the NES version. And I actually do that ahead of time, like during build, so that on the Super Nintendo ROM, I have them in the Super Nintendo format. Then there's the game logic, the logic that says Mario is at this position and now he's jumping and this is his velocity and this is where the Goomba is on the screen and this is, what the level, how to load the level like all of that. And all of that game logic code, which on the Nintendo runs on a chip called the 6502. On the Super Nintendo, which has a 65816, they're completely compatible. So all of that logic that's on the Nintendo cartridge for how it manipulates memory to keep the game logic and do things is all like works out of the box. I don't have to change any of it to run on the Super Nintendo. The kind of last bit that is on the cart is how the game interacts with the hardware. Like, how does it write to the screen? How does it load things into video memory? How does it interact with the sound? And that is completely different. So that's where most of the porting for my ports goes into is rejiggering all of those pieces to work with a different hardware. But because all of the game logic is just works out of the box, like I don't have to change any of that, and that makes it very easy. If I were to port it to something like a Sega Master System game to the Super Nintendo or something similar, none of that logic would work, or most of that logic wouldn't work. I'd have to rewrite all of it for the new CPU, and that becomes a much bigger endeavor.
So really, Master System obviously was a thought, but what came to mind first for me is something that seems considerably simpler. Because when I think about video games with flicker that is problematic, I think of the Atari 2600. Now, obviously, those games are considerably less complex than an NES game. Even if the logic and stuff didn't connect one-to-one, how difficult do you think it would be to translate something from that era?
From what very little I know about the Atari, the way it draws graphics and has information for games is just completely different from every other console. Like, I think it would probably be easier to port a Sega Master System game than an Atari game.
Wow.
Or it might even be easier to write an Atari emulator for Super Nintendo and run that. But that said, I don't know a lot about Atari, so it's possible that I'm completely speaking nonsense. And YouTube, get down in the comments, let me know if I'm completely wrong. But I don't. I don't think it would be easy because they're so wildly different hardware wise.
Yeah, I mean, I know programmers. It was the Wild West back then, and programmers would use every trick in the book just to get their games to even function on that weird little system. But they did
a lot of drugs.
That's true.
Too. Like, and I'm not saying that like in a negative way, but like they were fucked up all the time. So you're not following logical choices. You're like trying to learn a song in like a 4/6 time signature. It's well, what are we doing? Why did you do that?
I don't think you can blame anybody for doing drugs if they had to program stuff on the Atari, from what I've seen. I think that would drive most people.
Yeah, no, not at all.
When I think about games that would be really cool to see without flicker, like enhanced like that, there's a bunch of Atari games that come to mind that just, it would be really neat to see what those would look like cleaned up and if anyone would take the effort. But again, who's going to make that effort? Because it's not me.
It's you need to find somebody who is incredibly passionate about Atari and knows a ton about Atari hardware, and also incredibly passionate about Super Nintendo and knows a lot about Super Nintendo hardware, and is willing to put in hours and hours and hours of work for no money. Just
find that guy, and we're good to go.
That seems easy enough.
Tons.
I mean,
doesn't Ferg like?
We've been doing this for 10 years.
He does, and he's a baker, which means he's also that translates directly to Super Nintendo programming.
I think he's 100%. Got the Atari part under it. Then, like baker, is probably the same as programming an Atari game, so he's halfway there.
1-to-1.
It's very technical. Baking's very precise and technical and all of those things. I'm sure he could do it. Ferg can do anything.
He really
He's
can.
a fucking unicorn.
Love that man. Well, that's about all the questions that I had. Did you have any questions for us?
Oh, I didn't realize I had the opportunity to ask questions to you guys.
That's a weird way to conduct an interview, Chris.
We're weird people.
So we've talked a little bit about some games that you want to see, but like, what would each of your number one picks be for NES games you'd like to see ported to have this treatment done?
See, that's a big question.
I'm holding you to it. You can't change it. Like, once you've said it. Like,
no, that's fair. That's fair. I'm trying to think of like games that would benefit from it, other than just like, like, oh, this is cool.
I feel like I heard recently that somebody had been working on Mega Man 3, because I remember seeing something about that line that's on the character select screen, and somebody figured out what was causing that. Is that a thing that's already happening?
That has happened already, and Infidelity has done Mega Man 1, 2, 3, and 4, I believe.
Okay. Well, the first thing that came to my mind was Battletoads, but I have to assume that's one of the funky chip games, right?
Oh, man, I would be scared to port that pause music. Oh, man, Battletoads is some weird ROM. I don't actually know what type of ROM. That might be doable. I don't know. I've never seen an AO ROM before.
That's it's got a lot of flicker in it. It's a technically nuts game. I mean, the scrolling backgrounds and everything. It's a wild game, and there's, I think, a game breaking glitch. You can't beat the game 2 players on the vanilla mode. So like there would be some sort of real simple glitch to fix. And get that up and running would be really cool. I can't think of much in the way of proper. That does have some slowdown for sure. Oh, there's got to be a game that's going to jump out at me that's just like riddled with slowdown that I'd love to see.
The problem with Battletoads is I'd never be able to test it because I could never. Right. I don't even know how I would cheat in that game. Like, even cheating, it would make it be hard to beat.
Does this work? I don't know. Maybe.
Even with Infinite Lives, that game is brutal.
That's how I got through it. What was that, last summer? Just save states and just over and over and over and over again. Like, fuck that game. God damn it, that game's hard. Perhaps I'm misremembering. So I'm trying to think of like games that had either a ton of flicker or slowdown or whatever that would be worthy of this kind of effort. And I think something like The Guardian Legend would be something, right? Because there's like a lot of flicker and shit in that, isn't there?
During the shooting levels, there's a decent amount of flicker in the shooting levels.
Yeah. I think there's like some slowdown and stuff too. Like, I just think that game running as well as I just really fucking like that game.
Yeah, I mean, like Double Dragon is one of the ones that would be high on the list. You already did that. That's that game running crystal clear is pretty cool. What about the first? Well, no, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. We already have a cleaned up version in the Cowabunga collection, so that's not a huge priority.
By the way, for Double Dragon, I did add the intro from the cartoon to the beginning of the game with the cartoon sound, the music intro.
You're a monster.
So catchy. I had somebody on Twitter tell me that too. They were like, "Take this out." I was like, "No, sorry,
no, I will
do your own part if you don't want it in there."
That's right, you fucker. Oh, you should have called him a fucker. So, like, I'm not even going to lie. Like, I'm cheating, and I looked up games right now currently that have a lot of flicker. Apparently, Fester's Quest has a lot of flicker.
Oh,
is that?
I mean, and following up Blaster Master. That's a
yeah.
Yeah.
That's essentially Blaster Master 1.5, isn't it?
Right? Huh. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that, like, jumps out here as like, hey, these are super fucking flickery.
I mean, not because it's flickery, but it would be really awesome to have like the NES version of Paperboy, but with the arcade soundtrack.
Oh.
Because that game's soundtrack is amazing in the arcade, and it is absolutely terrible on the NES. Oh god, Super Pitfall. It's not even worth playing though. The game is such a disaster. But somebody did a whole like full-on remake of that game. Like they tried to fix that game from the ground up. That's a thing that exists out there. I should try that out one of these days. Oh boy.
Contra Force.
Oh my god, Contra Force
has a ton of slowdown.
That game's almost unplayable as it is. That would be a really interesting one to try out without slowdown. That would be really interesting. That's a good call.
That or isn't there a ton of slowdown in what is it called? What's the it's a Capcom shooter where you have wings, you're like a fucking bird. It's Birdman.
You're legendary
Harvey
and you
Birdman.
have wings.
Oh yeah, that legendary wings. There's a ton of slowdown in that and flicker in that too, right?
I don't know. I've not played
Harvey
a lot
Birdman.
of that game. Oh fuck, Bad Dudes is kind of a mess, but again, like
games that you want to play though, like is kind of the first.
Guardian Legend. That would be. I'm sticking with that. I think that is one of the most underrated, most wonderful games on the NES.
Guardian Legend is outstanding. I'm with Dan. Guardian Legend would be great. And you know what? I think just for poops and giggles, you should do Tecmo Baseball because nobody would see it coming. Nobody would see it coming.
Tecmo Bowl has a lot, right?
Oh shit! You could fix Epic's winter games.
I don't think I'm a magician. I don't think I can fix that.
The NES port of that game is so bad. Hilariously bad. No, that's really all that comes to mind. That would be like, this would, I mean, obviously Blaster Master would be my top pick, and you're already on top of that. Other Konami classics, like Goonies 2. That game doesn't suffer terribly from
I was going to say, I don't think that one is that bad. Like in some of the shooters too, like Gradius and stuff like that, there are some issues in there, but not enough, I would think, to like warrant months of work.
Shooters, you just said it. That's my pick. Stinger. That's what I would want to see cleaned up with no slowdown. Would be Stinger. Stinger is such a good game, and it's never been ported to anything. It's like this weird Twinbee game that's not called Twinbee for some reason. It is super good. It's got great music.
Because that doesn't sound as tough as Stinger.
Yeah, I guess. Stupid North Americans. But that would be my number one pick past Blaster Master. I would love to see a cleaned up version of Stinger.
Let me throw something crazy at you to see what you would think of this. What about something like Shadowgate or Deja Vu with mouse support?
With mouse support? Ooh,
that would be
God.
Super cool.
With the Super NES mouse. That's a thing.
I have no idea how hard that would be, but I think it would be cool.
That would be really cool. I tell you.
Deja Vu is such a cool game, too.
It's
like
not even
does
that exist?
It's a really cool fucking game.
I wonder if there's a hack for Super NES Lemmings to add the mouse, because like that's not an NES port. I mean, there was an NES version of Lemmings, so bully for you. You want to talk about adding mouse support to games? Port the NES version of Lemmings, but the Super NES version of Lemmings is so good. Except it would be even better if you could add mouse support. I wonder if there's a ROM hack for that already exists.
There's got to be.
It's so
right?
good, except it's still Lemmings. So like
that game is great, and I want to hear it.
That game must be great because it's ported to literally everything that's ever existed.
It's so good.
It's one of the. I don't get it. I don't get it.
It's harder than Castlevania.
It is definitely harder than Castlevania.
What, Lemmings?
No argument for me. Yeah,
you're out of your mind.
Harder than
that tracks.
Ninja Gaiden?
Oh,
yeah.
Much.
I can't find a quick Google search. Does not tell me that there is a hack for the SNES version of Lemmings that includes the mouse support, and I would love to see that happen.
Or what about something like? And I can't even think if it would really benefit it, but like something like Maniac Mansion, would that with mouse support make any difference?
Yeah, I think all those point and click games would, you know, like Maniac Mansion is available on other platforms that has a mouse, right? But I
suppose it is, yeah.
Like, has Shadowgate or Uninvited or Deja Vu been ported to anything? Are they on like DS or something?
I don't
Isn't
think so.
Deja Vu on the NSO?
But that's not going to support mouse.
No, it's not.
Yeah, one of those is on NSO.
Or Nightshade?
Nightshade's that's the one that's on NSO, yeah.
Okay.
Here's a fun question. Would it be easier to port a Zapper game to use the mouse or to use the Super Scope?
God, I have no idea. Why would you want to play any of them? I don't know. I've never looked at how. Like, I understand how those things work from the perspective of like how the hardware works, but I don't know how the game uses it. I'm going to go out on a limb and say it would be easier to port to the Super Scope than the Zapper.
The trouble with
or to the mouse.
The trouble with those games, in particular, like I think about, like, Duck Hunt's just a good time. It's not complicated, but it's fun to play. But something like Gumshoe, for example, is hardest to play because it's so hard to aim the light gun, right? You have no reticle. So if you're using it with a Super Scope, all of a sudden now you have a reticle. You know exactly where you're shooting. Or if you're using a mouse, you could incorporate a reticle. And Gumshoe is such a fascinating game because it is obscenely difficult to get anywhere in it because you have to use the Zapper. But there's it's a neat little game. It's a really interesting concept. It's an auto runner for freaking NES, and you jump by shooting your character, and you also have to shoot the obstacles that show up in his way. So having an ability to play that in a way that doesn't rely on just sharpshooting, basically, with the Zapper, would kind of open up that game to be more playable entirely. That would be a really interesting thing.
What if instead we ported it to the Genesis and used the Activator?
Sold.
Or just made a power pad version.
A really good idea.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Nice.
I don't know how you do that. So yeah, there you go. Those are those would be my number one and number two picks. If you could make Gumshoe work with either the Super NES, specifically the mouse, I think the mouse would be best for Gumshoe. But if you can make Gumshoe work with the Super NES mouse, or just Stinger, the way you do things now, those are my picks.
All right, I'll add Gumshoe to the list. It's very far in the bottom. It'll never get to, but it'll be on the list, and I'll take a look at Stinger.
You're gonna look at Gumshoe. Gumshoe's gonna be in the back of your head, being like, "That's just crazy enough to work."
How good is the music in Gumshoe?
Oh, it's great. It's Hip to Naka.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
that's good.
Great soundtrack that nobody's ever heard.
It's got a good beat, and you can dance to it. It's no Guardian Legend, but yeah, it's all right.
No, but what is? All right, well, I think that's a good place to leave it, with the exception of course, the question: What bread is the best bread?
I have to tell you, I knew this question was coming, and it has been the one that has provided the most angst over the last few days. I literally was talking to my wife about it. I'm like, they're going to ask me what the best bread is. This is a serious, this is an important question.
You don't want to come out like some amateur and be like, focaccia. Or, you know.
Yeah.
It's the raisin bread with the thick icing on the top of it. That's the best.
Oh, man.
That shit's not bad, though.
It's not. I really want one now. I'm going to go buy one tomorrow.
I'm giving you time to think. I got a care package from my aunt and uncle. They sent me from a super fancy bakery in North Jersey. They sent a bunch of really, really high dollar, super thick English muffins. And I was so fucking excited when I opened up the box because it's got original recipe, old school English muffins, cinnamon raisin, blueberry, and sourdough. And they're super thick and super expensive because it's North Jersey. They live in the part of North Jersey where you go to and you're like, this is just out of my fucking tax bracket. God damn, I should not be here. This is absurd. And they're really fucking good. Really, really good. I don't know how you guys feel about English muffins. I happen to love English muffins.
I love them.
Yeah, big fan.
Have you had English muffin bread?
No.
Was just
they make
English muffin.
They make English muffin in loaf form.
Oh my God.
You can put it in the toaster. It's great. It's fantastic. It's not my pick. It's not, just to be clear, it's not my pick, but it is good.
I would respect it if it was.
No, my pick. So my wife baked one time from scratch a brioche loaf that I turned into French toast. Ooh. And it might have been the most delicious breakfast that I've ever had in my life.
That's a solid
So
play
that's
right
what
there.
I'm going to say.
It's not bad.
Yeah. My kid's been bugging me for French toast. I just haven't had the energy to make a loaf of bread. I always make it out of challah.
Oh, because you're so fucking fancy. Yeah. I just looked
know
it up.
how to make it.
I'm not humble bragging. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't giving incorrect information here on the podcast. A package of 4 of these English muffins. So like just one regular bag is $15 before shipping for 4 English muffins.
That's a lot.
It's like, all right. That's a lot of money for English muffins. I haven't even had one yet. My daughter said that the blueberry one was very good. Anyway.
You let your daughter have one?
Yeah, I know. I'm a good dad.
Do they know that you have cancer? Like, you should be getting all of these $15 English muffins.
It's so bad. I keep telling, like, I will text them from the couch, and they're 15, right? So of course, when I mirror, please, like they get to the top of the stairs, and they just give me that just that look, that like shitty TV sitcom teenager look. What? And I'll be like, first of all, I have cancer, so like maybe let's drop the attitude a little bit, okay? Second of all, go let the ducks in. And they're like, motherfucker. And they do yell motherfucker, as Kris will attest to. They are, well, or anybody who's listened to this podcast.
They're saying it to you. They're telling the truth. That's how they exist.
Is correct. That is correct.
All right, well, thank you very much for joining us, Rumbleminze. This has been a very informative interview. I hope you had fun. I had fun. I'm still having fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. This was great. And feel free to I guess if people want to see what I'm up to and take a look, the best place to follow my ports is probably Twitter. I don't much like Twitter, but it's the best place for me to post when things are happening. And it's just twitter.com/Rumbleminze. I post there all the in progress videos and pictures and what I'm doing and when I release and all of that. So that's good. I have a Ko-fi page or coffee. I don't know how you pronounce it. I put it up there and like, I don't do this for the money. I don't need people to give me money, but like, if you enjoy it and you want to tip something, feel free to throw some money there if you really want to.
Fuck, I need the money.
I generally just donate I donate all the money to animal shelters for what it's worth, for everything that I get from a lot of this stuff. Like I don't keep it. So
that is fabulous.
Yeah.
I had one last question. I forgot to ask it earlier.
But we already did the bread question. I don't know if you're allowed
I know. Evan, he's a wizard, I assume, because I don't listen. So he'll just put this back, like, before the bread question. It'll be fucking great. It'll be seamless. Be like, oh, yeah, by the way, I was wondering. Right? See, there's a little lead in. It was good. Have you hit Infinite yet? Are you day one Infinite in the new season of Snap? I know
I'm way too lazy on Snap to like. I barely hit Infinite last season. It's just like I barely do my dailies anymore. I just want to keep splitting my Nightcrawler and my Psylocke and get cool splits of them and go from there.
I am 88.4 currently.
Nice.
Really, just with Ultron and Patriot. Like that is what is working the best.
I've been seeing that a lot. Lately.
Yeah. Just Snap and then Sandman on 5 and everybody's like, fuck. All right, I'm out. Okay. I'll go 2 cubes at a time. It's fine. Don't mind. All right. Anyway,
well, cool. Thank you both again. Like this is really cool, and I'm like honestly really enjoy the podcast, and I'm really kind of humbled and honored that you would ask me to be on it. So that's very cool. Thank you.
Thank you. This was great, man. I find what you do utterly fascinating, as evidenced by all the questions I had. I hope I wasn't too Kid Icarus heavy, but I think it's a really neat set of projects, and it never occurred to me that I could put them on a flashcard. So I'm gonna start doing that.
No, you can't, Kris. You cannot put them on a cart and sell them. Don't do it.
I'm not gonna sell them.
I might.
All right.
Just saying, out of the three of us, one of us has some medical bills.
All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us. And that wraps up the interview. All right. We're back. That was the internet. That was the interview, not the internet. Well, actually, it was the internet. That was the entire internet.
Oh, man.
Just for you.
This is coming apart in a big, bad fucking way, Kris.
It really is. But it's fine because now it's over. We've done it. The show's over. It's time to go to bed. And that is our show. Join us next time.
Do you want me to do it?
No, I got this.
You want me to do the end?
I got this. Join us next time for the Alphabet Super Series, where we're going to be playing my pick for the letter O, Off the Wall, for Super Nintendo. We're on most social media platforms, and if you want to get in touch with us, we aren't very difficult to find. All it takes is a quick look at our show notes. You'll see links to our social media accounts, as well as all manner of other fun stuff, like a link to our namesake, StoneAgeGamer.com, and more useful links than you could shake a joystick at. If you'd like to get early access to this show's episodes, as well as a bevy of other shows on the Geekade Podcast Network, check out our Patreon, also linked to in the show notes. It helps keep this show running week after week, and all our patrons are loved and appreciated. This show's theme song, Squared Roots, was written by Banjo Guy Ollie. You can learn all about his wonderful music and more by following the link to his YouTube channel, also in the show notes. And finally, as always, we'd like to thank our intrepid editor, Evan, for making the show listenable for all you folks. And we'd like to thank all you folks for listening in the first place. That's it, everybody. On behalf of Dan and myself, keep playing games.
Wow, you fucking nailed that.
Thank you.